Hey now, 580 Sports Talk going up on a Tuesday. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you for the next 3 hours, breaking down Super Bowl 57. Breaking down a KU win over Texas last night at Allen Fieldhouse. Previewing K-State versus TCU tonight. Oh, and by the way, more Super Bowl 57 coverage as well. Thank you so much for spending some of your afternoon hours with Dan and myself. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your attention. And we've got a lot to get to until 6 o'clock this evening. We've, of course, got coverage of the Chiefs and the Eagles in Super Bowl 57. We'll get to some key matchups here in just a moment. And I don't mean general matchups, because I feel like we've talked about that a lot. We talked about that a lot just with Matt Verderame yesterday, that offensive line versus defensive line. And, you know, Patrick Mahomes versus the secondary of the Eagles, and the Chiefs defense and the offensive run game mind of Nick Sirianni, all these general concepts. I want to get down to the specifics. What unit versus unit, what player versus player matchups are going to decide this game? And I've got a couple in mind, some fairly obvious. We're going to get down to the specific matchups that could decide Super Bowl Sunday coming up this weekend. We'll also preview the game with Jordan Foote of Sports Illustrated's Arrowhead Report coming up at the bottom of this hour. Looking forward to that. Later on in the show today, we'll get to last night's big win for the Kansas Jayhawks over the Texas Longhorns. Had KU lost, they would have been 3 games out of first place in the Big 12 with 7 games left, pretty much eliminating them from Big 12 title contention. But by winning, they're 1 game out. They play Texas again later this season, and they are right in the thick of things still. Cannot say enough how big that game was. By the way, and we'll get to this more in the 4 o'clock hour, as a Joseph Yesufu truther, huge night for you, boy. Huge.
The Yesufu agenda, all those yes men and yes women out there.
There we go. The agenda lives on.
Who've been flying the flag for Joseph Yesufu. That was an extremely validating night of basketball.
The quietest guy KU has dunked a ball in transition and then pointed at someone on the other team. It was incredible. I've never seen that from him before. So that was a fun game last night. We'll recap that in full. Plus, Michael Swain is going to join us from fog.net and 24/7 Sports for Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. We'll look ahead to K-State versus TCU tonight as well. Another big game for the Big 12 race. Eddie Lampkin sounds like he's good to go for TCU. Well, good to go is probably a stretch, but he is going to play for TCU.
He is going to play per source, which the source is Eddie Lampkin tweeting that he's going to play tonight. So that's one big component back for TCU. Obviously, they won't have Mike Miles back, who's their most important player. But having Lampkin back strengthens TCU. They'll be a better version of the team that went to Stillwater and lost on Saturday.
So we will look ahead to that matchup coming up a little bit later on in the show as well. We've got our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We'll have What Is Wrong With You. We've got Random Question Tuesday coming up here in just a little bit. It's all coming up on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. And as always, we would love for you to be a part of the show today. Hit us up on the Big O Tires text line. You know the number, 785-272-9429. And the YouTube comment section wide open and ready for you as well. Our YouTube channel, Sports on 580 WIBW. If you want to go watch the live stream, make sure you are subscribed if you have not already. Last night's Jayhawks instant reaction post-game wrap is up on the YouTube right now, recapping the big moments from last night's KU win at Allen Fieldhouse. And I think only briefly did we have anyone who was cleaning up the bleachers behind me. So we're getting cleaner and cleaner shots back there. Love to see that. Dan is going to have a recap tonight, by the way, from the K-State game.
Yes, I am. Stay up late with me after the game. Once we hear from the players, once we hear from Jerome Tang, we'll get a post-game reaction in from Bramlage Coliseum.
So, again, another reason to subscribe and be checking out our YouTube channel. But let's get to Chiefs versus Eagles to lead things off on this Tuesday afternoon. As I said a little bit earlier, we have spent a lot of time, the Chiefs' offensive line is going to have a big task to undertake against the defensive front of the Eagles, and vice versa as well. The Chiefs' defensive line and the Eagles' offensive line, that should be a great matchup going both directions. Patrick Mahomes, can he beat the secondary, a talented but still somewhat prone to the big play secondary for the Eagles that also plays a real physical brand of football? Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is going to get a 15-yard penalty in this game. Is that a prop I can bet? Can I bet individuals getting 15-yard penalties?
I would honestly be surprised if it wasn't somewhere.
I'm going to dig for this, because if anyone was going to get one, it would be C.J. Gardner-Johnson of the Philadelphia Eagles. Wide receivers versus defensive backs. Same again, going both ways. Can the young Chiefs defensive backs hold up against a really good receiving core for Philadelphia? But I want to get to these specifics. I want to look at player versus player for which matchups are going to make the biggest difference in this game. What individual matchups could swing this game from one direction to the other? And the first one I've got is is in the groups we've already talked about that I've already mentioned. I think it is the most obvious one, or one of the most obvious ones, but it is also one of the biggest ones. And that is whichever offensive tackle, it might be flipped. It could be Andrew Wiley. It could be Orlando Brown. But on any given snap, it is the Chiefs' offensive tackles against Hassan Reddick of the Philadelphia Eagles. Reddick has been arguably, I think, maybe not arguably, the best defensive player in the postseason. He has been tremendous. And I know we've talked at length about how the Eagles have not played especially difficult teams so far to get to the Super Bowl. He has been absolutely incredible for the Eagles in the postseason and for most of the season in general. He had a great year for Philadelphia. I think Philly's interior defensive line actually has more depth and maybe more talent overall than the edge presence does for Philly, because some of those guys from Philadelphia are a bit older. They've been banged up over the course of the year. And up front, Philly's got insane depth. Hargrave, Cox, Davis, Sue,
Quinn,
all these dudes on the interior they have added over the course of the year. So much talent.
Linval Joseph, that's the other one I was thinking of. Yeah, Quinn's outside, but yeah, like Joseph, yeah, those are 5 defensive tackles start for just about any other team in the league.
And with all that depth, that's going to be tough for the Chiefs in the middle, but the best part of the Chiefs' offensive line is the interior. It's Tooney, it's Humphrey, it's Smith from left guard to right guard. So the most difficult individual matchup, I think, is, all right, Orlando Brown. This is, I know this, we use this phrase kind of as a joke sometimes because we don't cover the NBA where they use it really seriously, but this is legitimately the Orlando Brown legacy game, right?
Right.
Like, if he wants that money that he thinks he's worth, you better hold up and better go protect Patrick Mahomes in the biggest game of the year, in the biggest game of your entire career. And he is going to have a very difficult matchup going up against Hassan Reddick. They're probably going to get that matchup. And again, Andrew Wiley in the same boat. Brown is the bigger name. We also have higher expectations for Orlando Brown, but Reddick could end up flipping left to right, right to left. The Chiefs are maybe going to chip a little bit, but if you go back, point of historical perspective, to Super Bowl 55, bad offensive line this is a good offensive line. That was with a bad offensive line against a great defensive front. The Chiefs barely chipped and helped at all for most of the game. At least your traditional keep the tight end in and chip, bring the running back out, throw a block, leak out into the flat, whatever it might end up being. They did very little of that. That's not something Andy Reid generally loves to do. That's not something Andy Heck likes a lot for his offensive line to have extra guys in there crowding things up. I would be surprised if we saw a lot of that in this game. We might see some. I would be surprised if we saw a lot of it in this contest. So you're going to end up one-on-one Reddick versus Brown, Reddick versus Wiley for a lot of this game. You have got to keep him at bay as much as possible. A lot of teams, a lot of decent offensive lines have not been able to do that over the course of the year. That's the one I am looking for. And that comes back to the point we've talked about already last week and this week about maybe having to get the ball out a little bit quicker, having to be instantly decisive. Patrick Mahomes will have to be, because sacks are not just on the offensive line. Pressures are not just on the offensive line. A lot of that's on the quarterback too. So I think Mahomes will have to be decisive, will have to be deliberate with what he wants to do with the ball. But his protection, I'm more comfortable up front, even with the depth, or in the interior, I should say, even with the depth that the Eagles have and the talent they have on the inside of that defensive line. I'm more comfortable with the Chiefs interior because I know that trio is really darn good. On the edges, though, that's where I've got the biggest concern. If Brown and Wiley can hold up, if they can keep Reddick to one or fewer sacks and not a sack on third down, fewer pressures on third down, things like that, I think this Chiefs offense is going to be okay. If Reddick does get home and he's able to create pressure and he beats Orlando Brown, who wants all that big money to be a blindside protector, that swings favor, I think, way in Philadelphia's favor.
So it's funny, right, that we look at Andrew Wiley and Orlando Brown, and we almost talk about them as though they are, I don't, maybe liabilities is too strong, but I don't think we look at Brown and Wiley as above average players. I think that our perception of them, and I would wager the perception of many of our listeners, is that they are average to maybe even slightly below in pass protection. And certainly there's some film that bears that out. Like Orlando Brown's been in the league long enough. He's good at what he's good at, and he's not good at what he's not good at. That being said, you go and you look at some of the numbers. You go and look at like ESPN's pass block win rate, and those numbers tell you that Brown and Wiley are pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Two of the best offensive tackles in the league. So what I think that comes back to is something that you brushed up against as you were talking there, that sacks are a quarterback stat. I think a lot of people will tell you that they are almost exclusively a quarterback stat, that the sack is the quarterback not getting rid of the ball, not being able to extend a play, breaking the pocket or stepping up into pressure. And Patrick Mahomes is really good at not getting sacked. One of the best quarterbacks in the league at not getting sacked. And while his offensive line deserves some credit for that, certainly it's what Mahomes does and what the offense allows him to do that makes him really his best pass protector. So yes, if we are talking about Hassan Reddick in the postgame at all, if we're talking about him, that probably means he had an impact, that he was able to win in speed rush and get around and make life really, really hard on Patrick Mahomes. But I think it's a winnable matchup for the Chiefs. The Eagles have a very similar defensively. I consider them kind of similar to the last two teams that the Chiefs played in the Super Bowl, the 49ers in 2019 and the Buccaneers in 2020, where you had very aggressive fronts. You had defensive ends that want to fly up the field and get after the quarterback, and defensive tackles capable of collapsing the pocket. And the Chiefs offensive line famously held up pretty well against the 49ers in 2019. They won that game.
Yes, it did.
They famously did not hold up very well against the Buccaneers in 2020, and they did not win that game. Here's your question for Orlando Brown. Is he better than Mike Rammers?
Yes.
Substantially.
Yes.
And is Andrew Wiley today better than Andrew Wiley 2 years ago? I think the numbers would suggest that he's an improved player.
He's not worse.
He's also not having to play left tackle.
That's true.
Either. So I think that the concern about the Chiefs offensive tackles, it's legitimate, but I think it's a little bit overstated.
Okay.
I think those guys can hold up, and that Mahomes himself is his own best pass protector with his ability to step up, move the pocket, and have his receivers find places to get open where Mahomes can get rid of the ball. Because the other thing Mahomes is really good at doing is getting rid of the ball. Doesn't always work, but he's good at getting the ball out towards a receiver that's not grounding, but it's also not going to be a complete pass, but it's also not going to be intercepted. Like, he's really good at turfing it 3 yards short of a receiver over the middle just to avoid the sack. So that's what you're looking for. Like, it's the pass rush presence. They've got too many good pass rushers to just assume Mahomes is going to finish the game with a clean jersey. But I think Mahomes and that offensive line will do well enough to avoid the big negative plays that will create problems for the Chiefs. Put them in 3rd and 13 or 2nd and 18. Put them in those really bad spots you want to avoid, the spots that generally end up leading to punts.
What would you say is your number one-on-one matchup?
Number one-on-one matchup in this game for me. We talked to Matt Verderam yesterday, our NFL insider from Fansided, about this. He thinks there's going to be some one-on-one coverage on Dallas Goedert potentially. And so I thought about that, Justin Reed on Dallas Goedert potentially being a matchup. But then, I didn't watch I didn't watch a ton, hardly any of the opening night festivities. I saw the clips that made it to social media, the quotes that were tweet worthy, what I ended up seeing. L'Jarius Sneed, wonderful news, first of all, that he has cleared concussion protocol.
Awesome.
That he's feeling well, that he's back to practice, that he's on track to play in the Super Bowl. That's a big, big deal. Big deal to have L'Jarius Sneed. That's arguably your second best defensive player.
Yep.
And he's going to be on the field for the Super Bowl. And somebody asked him, you going to shadow anybody? Or are you going to follow somebody around the field? He said no, but he kind of winked when he did it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a chance there might be a one-on-one for L'Jarius Sneed throughout this game where he maybe follows Devontae Smith or he follows A.J. Brown. And you try and you limit the easy throws for Jalen Hurts. There's a misconception that the Eagles are going to come out and play like Maryland Eye football and just run it and take 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Yeah.
That's how they finish games, but they are very their scripts tend to be pass heavy early in games.
They, through the first, I know for sure 6, it might have been 7 weeks of the season, they covered the first half spread in the entire first half of the season. And the reason that's notable is we knew from the very beginning of the year they were going to be good. Those were some big first half spreads, and consistently they were up at the half because they had the ability to air it out.
Yeah, explosive passing plays gave them the ability to do that. So I expect that they will hew to that and have a few more pass plays in the early script than you expect. If you make those hard on Jalen Hurts, you don't allow him to get into an early rhythm, and you force a couple of early punts, you have a chance in this game to put the Eagles behind the 8 ball, take a 10-point lead or a 13-point, 14-point lead in this game. That's going to be really, really hard for the Eagles to play the game they want to play in the second half, if indeed the Chiefs are able to do that. So I think whatever one-on-ones we end up seeing in the Chiefs secondary, making it hard for the Eagles to move the ball consistently, to pick up third downs, I'll be keeping an eye on those matchups, particularly in the first half. Because if the Eagles offense doesn't get rolling in the first half, they could find themselves behind 10-0, 10-3, 14-3, 17-7, something like that. And they would be in some pretty dire straits, I think, if that were to happen. So I want to see if there are one-on-one matchups between members of the Chiefs secondary and Eagles receivers or pass catchers, because I think those could end up being very crucial if indeed that's the direction Steve Spagnuolo decides to go.
If you got to pick, you're putting L'Jarius Sneed one-on-one on someone the whole game. You need him to shadow someone. Who is that someone?
I think it's probably A.J. Brown.
I would think the same thing.
Like, because the thing about Devontae Smith is really good. Awesome route. Guy won the freaking Heisman Trophy. Like, he's a great route runner. He's got terrific hands. He's not physically big.
No.
And I think that you can, maybe muscle him a little bit and try and have him run through zones and maybe try and, run him into some contact and tackle him out on the perimeter. But if I'm going to shadow somebody one-on-one down the field, I think it's got to be A.J. Brown, because this is the game they got A.J. Brown for, right? Like these are the moments that you go and you acquire a number one wide receiver like A.J. Brown for. And I would think there'd be a heavy dose of him in the script, because he's the kind of player too who he can make a contested catch. He can beat you in yards after catch. Like he's a complete player, and a more complete player, in my opinion, than Devontae Smith at this stage. So that would be the guy I would probably want to have a one-on-one against.
I want Sneed's physicality on him as well. I want that in the bigger guy. Not that McDuffie is small, not that Jalen Watson is small necessarily, but A.J. Brown is a monster. We talked about that the other day, that he is jacked. He is a physical monster, despite only being about 6 foot, 6'1". I want the physical matchup. I don't want a smaller corner getting worn down against that guy all game long. Whereas I think you probably, I don't want to say it's easier necessarily to match up on Devontae Smith because he's smaller, but it's a different kind of coverage. And I think it wears you down a little bit less. A.J. Brown's going to fight you. He's going to slap and hit and hand fight the entire way down the field, every single route he runs. That is something that I think is why you would put Sneed on him, because Sneed's the same kind of player.
We have a text in the Big O Tires text line, I think bears discussing as well, from the 785. And, of course, the Big O Tires text line, you can hit us up, 785-272-9429. The text suggests also need a spy on the Eagles quarterback, need a spy on Jalen Hurts. I don't necessarily know that you need either of the linebackers or the safeties to play a spy role. I think the most important thing, actually, for the Chiefs on defense when it comes to containing that run threat is just setting the edge. Because when you set the edge on the perimeter with your defensive ends, right, what you do is you force the running game back into traffic, back between the tackles, into the middle, into the interior, into traffic where there are more bodies and more guys there who can funnel down and make tackles. You know who's really good at setting the edge? Frank Clark.
Yes, he is.
Frank Clark has been terrific, consistently excellent.
Always has been.
Even as his pass rush productivity has ebbed and flowed in his time as the Chief, the one thing he has been consistently excellent at is setting the edge. Because if you set the edge on the Eagles running game, you force everything inside, Jalen Hurts doesn't get to bounce outside of the edge and pick up those 6 or 7 before he scoots out of bounds. You make Jalen Hurts carry the ball, he might get 6 or 7, but you don't give him that outlet to the outside, he's going to take a hit before he goes down. And those hits, they accumulate over the course of 60 minutes, especially for a guy who might be on a bum shoulder. So I think that setting the edge with the defensive ends and making sure that the running game for the Eagles has to occur between the tackles, including whatever Jalen Hurts does in the ground game, I think that's going to be the strategy against the run. I think that's going to be what works best for the Chiefs against the run.
Well, and the other thing that factors into that, too, is from the linebacker spot, when is Nick Bolton at his best? Going downhill. He is able to go downhill. And Chanel's the same kind of way, and I'm sure we'll see at least a little bit of Leo Chanel in the game, mostly on special teams, but you know what I mean. He's also at his best going downhill. You want your linebackers funneling downhill toward the ball at the line of scrimmage. Best way to do that, make sure on those RPOs, inside give, Jalen Hurts is giving it off, and he's not going to go test Frank Clark on the edge. He's not going to go test George Karlaftis on the edge. That, I think, is going to be of paramount importance. By the way, one thing I wanted to get to, because one other matchup that you mentioned that I think is going to be a fascinating matchup here is Dallas Goedert and Justin Reed, should those two match up. And I've got the numbers here. It is, and I'm just trying to do some math real quick. Over the last 6 weeks, I believe it is, Justin Reed's passer rating allowed when he was the closest defender targeted, passer rating allowed 71.3.
And that stands in stark contrast to where it was going into the Cincinnati game, where we were kind of looking at Justin Reed funny in the light because he talked that talk going into the Cincinnati game, and then they lost. And you remember Hunter Henry's name, or not Hunter Henry, Hayden Hurst's name. I will never keep those two. Like, even I do it. So I forgive Justin Reed for that. But his play has really improved. Everybody's has down the stretch. I think the people talking about the Chiefs defense like it's the Chiefs defense from the first 6 weeks of the season, you're missing what this defense has become. Not to say that they're all of a sudden the 85 Bears, but this is a championship level defense over the last 6 weeks and into the playoffs.
According to Pro Football Focus, which is not always great in general and not always great for defensive backs, 7 of Justin Reed's 8 best games in coverage have come in the last 8 weeks. That's how good he has been recently. We've got to take a break. We'll get to more Super Bowl later this hour with Jordan Foote. But first things first, we'll play some Random Question Tuesday next on 580 Sports Talk.
Rural living has endless perks, and with Mercury Broadband, high-speed internet service is one of them. With plans starting at $50 a month, Mercury Broadband travel.
Brendan and Dan here with you on 580 Sports Talk on this Tuesday afternoon. Jordan Foote of Sports Illustrated will join us here in a few minutes. But first, a quick round of Random Question Tuesday. Dan, yay or nay on Super Bowl parties?
Yay if it is you and a bunch of people who do not care about the outcome. If you care about the outcome, the biggest nay in the entire world.
Yeah, I don't like watching games with people in general. Like I've got a small circle in which I have a group of people I'm willing to watch any sort of game with. Super Bowl parties, they attract a lot of people. I was just talking yesterday about how much I love that people come together for the Super Bowl and it's a big deal. But by the same token, like, I don't really want to talk to people who don't know what they're watching. Like, I'd rather like talk to people who are into it. So the whole, oh my God, what's happening? Who are these people? Are these teams good? Like, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, I understand that. Like, I like to talk to people about the game. I like to, share observations about the game and make predictions. And I like to sound smart around people or sound dumb around people, as the case may be. I might predict something and get it completely wrong. When you're right 52% of the time, you're wrong 48% of the time. But now I like the social aspect of it. But if I care who wins, then I don't want to deal with any of that. When I was in college, I was a sophomore in college the year the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And my roommates had a bunch of people over for the game and, had food and everything and gathered in the great room. And I made it half a quarter. And then I retreated to my own room in our apartment to watch the game by myself. I could not be around people and watch a game that I cared about. So yay when you don't care, nay when you do.
What's your question for today?
Question for today. When was the last time you got pulled over?
The last time I got pulled over was May 18th, 2019. It was just past the middle of May 2019.
You remember the exact day? Wow.
Yeah, I do, because I'm a moron. I was leaving work early that day. It was the weekend my younger sister graduated from college. So I was flying to South Carolina that afternoon, that evening. And I told Jake, and he was like, you don't need to come in. But I had a few things I had to get done. I was like, I'd rather do these now than do it Monday morning or Sunday night or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't need to drive to Topeka, but I did. And guess what? I got pulled over on my way there. And I felt really dumb. But that's the last time I got pulled over, though. I got a speeding ticket. I've not gotten one since.
Yeah, my last time was also in it would have been late 2018. Would have been November 2018.
Okay.
I was in Lawrence, actually. I got pulled over right before you get to the toll booth to get back on I-70.
Oh, yeah.
There by the DoubleTree.
Oh, yeah.
And got pulled over. I was going too fast. It was late at night, and I think the officer pulled me over, and I legitimately was like, because I didn't go to Lawrence a lot, so I had, I wasn't intimately familiar with the speed limit like I should have been. And I told the officer, look, man, I messed it up. I thought it was a little faster. I didn't realize it had slowed down. I was preparing to slow down for the toll and all that. And I think it was pretty, it was like 1 a.m. And I think the officer just wanted to make sure I wasn't driving under the influence or anything. I wasn't. So he let me off without a warning, with a warning. And it's been a long time. I'm knocking on wood over here since your boy's gotten a ticket. I think I've learned to ease off the lead foot a little bit as I've gotten older.
Yeah, I've gotten 3 speeding tickets before. Not enjoyable. Did not enjoy the experience with any of those, and don't plan to do that ever again. That's going to do it for Random Question Tuesday. We're going to take a quick time out here. When we come back, though, on the other side of this break, Jordan Foote from Sports Illustrated's Arrowhead Report is going to join us as we look ahead to Chiefs and Eagles coming up in Super Bowl 57. Our Super Bowl week previews continue next with Jordan Foote on 580 Sports Talk.
I'm Jim Chesko with your
Back on 580 Sports Talk on this Tuesday afternoon, February 7th. Brendan and Dan here with you on the Sports Voice of Kansas. And, of course, on YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW is the channel if you haven't checked it out and subscribed as of yet. Of course, it is Super Bowl week, and it's time to bring in our good friend Jordan Foote from Arrowhead Report at Sports Illustrated. You can find him on Twitter at FooteNoted. That's FOOTE noted. And all of his tremendous work can be found over at Sports Illustrated's Arrowhead Report. Jordan, my friend, how are you?
Buddy, I'm good, man. Do you think the talk around town, I bet it's the same for you. We're all in the state of Kansas here. Is there a big game this weekend or something? Is it KU? Is it K-State? What's going on over here?
You know, I personally am pretty worked up about KU versus Oklahoma down in Norman coming up on Saturday. But the final game of the, respected football season is coming up this weekend, unless you're, most people don't really put a lot of respect on the XFL's name, but we can talk about that another time. It is Super Bowl Sunday coming up this weekend. Obviously, all the wild festivities going on down there in Glendale. Not on Radio Row this year. Do you miss being there for all of the nonsense that comes with the lead up to the Super Bowl?
A little bit, yes and no. I think it was that was my first Radio Row last year, and I hope I'll be back down there soon. I missed the deadline this year to apply, so that's kind of a mess up on my part. But getting down there, man, it was hectic, and it was an experience. The good far outweighed the bad. I think there's just so much going on that you almost have overload at some point. And there was a point, though, at the end of the week where I just kind of stood and looked around when things finally died down a little bit. Like, man, this is really freaking cool. So once you get down there, it's not that bad. The process of getting everything set up and getting down there and capturing footage, it depends on what you're doing. But, man, there's not much better than to say that you did that for your job, and just went down there and soaked everything in, got some content, did some interviews. It was a lot of fun. So definitely it's different covering it from up here. Back in Kansas City, I think it's a lot more relaxing and a lot more chill, but I kind of do have that itch to get the chaos back up and running.
We'll make it down there Sunday. One of these days, we will make a 580 Sports Talk trip down there ourselves. As for the game itself, Jordan, I will give you an either or, A or B, one or the field. What is the most important matchup in this game? Is it the Chiefs' offensive line protecting against that great Eagles defensive line, or is it something else?
I literally just did a radio hit before we chatted with you, and I think it's the pass rush for both sides, but specifically because the Chiefs' offensive line more questionable, I think, on the outside than the Eagles. And the Eagles' defensive line, that front, it's insane, man. It's got to be the Chiefs' offensive line versus them. Like when you have Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Josh Sweat, Javon Hargrave, Hassan Reddick out there, that is a heck of a five. Then you also have Jordan Davis. Then you also have Robert Quinn. Then you also have Ndamukong Suh. That's ridiculous. Like they've had 40 sacks in their last 5 or 8 games or whatever it is. They're averaging like 5 sacks over that span per game. They are a quarterback wrecking, fear instilling, just nightmare inducing type of unit. The Chiefs offensive line, ironically or unironically, depending on how you look at it, the tackles have not been great this year. Orlando Brown has been anything but easy money this year at times. He's struggled a little bit, particularly against really athletic guys. I think Patrick Mahomes has done a better job helping him with his drop depth in the pocket. Andrew Wiley on the other side, for the price tag and for the role, he's been okay. But for a Chiefs offensive line that's probably a top 5 unit, I want to say, in the NFL, the tackle spots have not been very good. So that, I think, head and shoulders above everything else. Quarterback battle is important. The head coach matchup is important. Special teams is worth talking about. Mahomes is great. Hurts is great. The receivers are awesome. It's got to be the Chiefs offensive line against the Eagles defensive line.
I'm glad you bring up the wide receivers for Kansas City, because I think while the matchup with the Chiefs offensive line and the Eagles defensive line has dominated a lot of conversation this week, do you have any trepidation about the depth at wide receiver for the Chiefs going into this game with McCole Hardman obviously not going to play? I know he hasn't been around for a while, but Juju's coming off of an injury. Kadarius Toney coming off of an injury as well. Justin Watson did not play. I know it was due to illness, but did not play in the AFC Championship game. Do you have any concerns about the Chiefs wide receiver depth entering this weekend?
Yeah, I'm glad you prefaced it with the injury front, because Hardman if you have one of Hardman or Tony out there, obviously they couldn't really get both out there often. If you have one, I think they share enough skills together that it's not that big of a deal. So from that front, it's not that bad. But Juju has not been very effective and very involved on offense since about Christmas, it seems. Tony has been hot and cold. He just cannot stay out there on the field, which is always a massive concern and will be next year and will be if he's still there the year after that. Justin Watson, ironically, getting him back, I think, is a little bit more important than people think. So the Chiefs have enough, and MBS was the playoff hero, but they're going against a tough team. Man, that front is not going to give them a ton of time to get open. James Bradbury's a really, really good player. Darius Slay is a phenomenal player. CJ Gardner-Johnson, I believe they still have out there at safety, and the secondary is really good. So they're going to be facing a very tough set of assignments. It's not a Tyreek Hill situation where you can just double him, double Kelsey, and force the rest to win. Like, the Chiefs have guys who can get open. Juju is very intelligent, very good at finding soft spots in zone coverage. Tony is a matchup nightmare for just about anybody. MBS was winning in double coverage last game in the AFC Championship. So I'm a little bit worried. I do think they're generally going to be okay, but if the pass rush is getting home quickly and you have to keep another tight end in to chip and then you go into heavy personnel, that could limit your wide receiver effectiveness. So it's kind of a domino effect. They're in the toughest game of the year for a reason, I believe, but I do think generally they're going to be okay.
Our guest is Jordan Foote of Sports Illustrated's Arrowhead Report, joining us here on 580 Sports Talk. You can join Jordan on Twitter at FootNoted and follow his work there. Jordan, this is the third Super Bowl for the Kansas City Chiefs in 4 years, and it feels like there are a lot of similarities between their opponent this time around and the opponents that they had the last two times they reached football's grandest stage. Are the Eagles the best team the Chiefs have played in a Super Bowl in the Mahomes era?
I'm going to lean that it was Tampa that second time, and perhaps it was just because the Chiefs got mollywopped so bad, but they just had so many playmakers on defense. The wide receiving core was insane. I would give Tom Brady that year the edge over Jalen Hurts this year, just considering the injury. Hurts just doesn't seem like he's quite the same that he was before he got hurt. So I'm going to go Tampa. But with that said, I think Philly objectively has a better roster than the Chiefs do. They have more playmakers at wide receiver. They have a better, maybe more well-rounded, I guess you could say, offensive line. The defensive front is fantastic. The secondary has playmakers. Like, they have star talent. They have depth. They have continuity. They have a good blend of youth and veteran leadership. So they have one hell of a team. I just don't think they're quite up to snuff with Tampa. The Chiefs are going to give them most likely a better fight than they did in that Tampa game, just because the offensive line isn't in shambles right now. With that said, though, they played three really good teams. Even that Niners team back in 2019, I guess that would have been the beginning of 2020, that was a really good squad. They had a fantastic defense. So they've played some really, really tough teams in the Super Bowl, and I'm not going to equate it to a LeBron James type deal where he gets to the finals and then gets penalized for losing, because Mahomes and the Chiefs have enough to win all these matchups. Maybe 2021 was a different story. But, man, this team is definitely very tough.
The Eagles enter this game, per the Jeff Sagarin ratings, having played the 31st out of 32 most difficult schedule in the NFL in terms of strength of schedule. How much stock do you put into that idea that while the Eagles have all of that talent and impressive roster 1 through 53, that they may not be as battle-hardened as a team that comes out of the AFC due to the fact that they didn't exactly play Murderer's Row in the playoffs and haven't exactly faced the level of quarterback and the level of offense that they are going to see on Sunday?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely something worth questioning, in that they played, I think by QBR standards, the best quarterback they played was like Jared Goff this year. They played, I believe Kirk Cousins was one. Dak Prescott was up there. Aaron Rodgers just wasn't the same. And then they had, of course, a couple games against Washington. They played Indy. I think they had Tennessee on the schedule, New York, Chicago. So off memory, it just doesn't seem like they played very many terrific quarterbacks. And like you said, the strength of schedule was objectively poor this year, and it wasn't just poor, it was very bad. They did not play many good teams. So you can only play who's on your schedule. And we always say that no matter who the team is, no matter what the credit or discredit is. They did go 14-3. They did well. They did handle their business. With that said, though, they haven't faced Patrick Mahomes this year. They haven't faced the Kansas City Chiefs offense this year, and they didn't play Buffalo. So it's not like they had anything close. They didn't play Cincinnati, so it's not anything close to that. And then defensively, it's not like the Chiefs are crazy, but they also didn't play a ton of good defenses, and the Chiefs are probably right around average right now. I think they deserve a little bit more credit than people have given them throughout the year. They have not played an Andy Reid-led, Patrick Mahomes quarterbacked, Travis Kelce-fueled, Steve Spagnuolo, mad scientist-induced team yet this year, and I think it could show in the Super Bowl. I mentioned throughout the week that I don't think there's a path to a blowout really in this one. I think the biggest final score disparity I could see was maybe like 10 points, and maybe you consider that a blowout for a Super Bowl, but Philly hasn't played many good opponents. That could hurt them. It's one of those things where you don't really know until you do it, so we're definitely going to find out here in a few days.
What's one aspect of this matchup that you think the conventional wisdom or the consensus opinion from the talking heads going into this game is getting wrong? What's one thing you think might be conventional wisdom that shouldn't be when it comes to the breaking down of this matchup?
Man, that's a really, really good question. I don't think I've ever had something framed that way. I think a lot of people, and I don't want to sound like I'm discounting Jalen Hurts. Everyone acts like he's still the Jalen Hurts of old. And maybe it's just national media that's saying that, but Jalen Hurts, like, it's, of course, a matchup between two supremely talented quarterbacks, and maybe Jalen Hurts, his shoulder is better after a few weeks off or a week off or whatever it was. But since he came back, man, he's not looked very good. He threw for 154 yards in the first playoff game, 121 that second game. He came back week 18, didn't throw a touchdown and threw a pick. Like, he, under pressure, has not looked nearly as comfortable, and he's a guy that wasn't very good under pressure before that. He just struggled. That was the only really hole you could poke in his resume. Then in the playoffs, man, throwing down the field has been very bad. I think he's like 4 of 16 on throws 20-plus yards down the field. He just isn't pushing the ball down the field with as much accuracy and conviction as he was. The touch isn't really there. So he's still going to be able to run. They're going to run him into the ground in this Super Bowl, as they should, because he's their guy, because it's the last game of the year. But I think people need to reevaluate. I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is going to play poorly in the Super Bowl, but if the game script doesn't go as planned and they can't run the ball effectively and the defense isn't doing its job, if the Eagles get down, let's say 17-7 or 20-10 or something like that, I would be very hard-pressed to see them coming back just because Jalen Hurts doesn't look the same.
Last couple questions we've got for Jordan Foote, deputy editor of Arrowhead Report over at Sports Illustrated, joining us here on 580 Sports Talk. You can find Jordan as well on Twitter at FootNoted. Jordan, we've spent a lot of time on this show talking about the rookies for the Chiefs over the last really week and a half or so, and how well they played against Cincinnati, generally speaking, in the AFC Championship game, and how big of a role they'll also have, obviously, in Super Bowl 57. Which Chiefs rookie do you think is the most important one for this matchup? Who needs to have a better game more so than any of the other members of the class?
Man, that is a good one. I think it's going to be Trent McDuffie, perhaps. Like, Brian Cook is important. I think George Karlaftis having a good game would help a ton. Isaiah Pacheco might have an important game. I think it's one of the two main rookie cornerbacks, whether it's Jalen Watson or Trent McDuffie. And it seems like Jalen Watson gets tested vertically a lot more than Trent McDuffie does. When you're facing guys like Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, that's going to happen. So if Jalen Hurts, like I mentioned, isn't quite as accurate or puts a little bit too much or not quite enough on one of those deep passes, does Jalen Watson get his head turned around? Does he get too grabby? Everyone knows, obviously, that Carl Sheffers is officiating this game, and his crew gets a little trigger happy when it comes to throwing some DPI flags. So can Jalen Watson keep himself in check? Can he make a play on the ball? And can Trent McDuffie not only get some cleats that actually fit him and don't cause him to slip and slide out on the field? That seemed to be a problem last game, but can he keep up his level of play? And L'Jarius Sneed is going to help. Brian Cook is going to help. Juan Thornhill and Justin Reed are playing better. Can Trent McDuffie continue to play like a blue chip player that the Chiefs got at pick, whatever it was, 21 this year in the draft? If that happens, the Chiefs secondary is going to be fine. I think you might have a couple coverage sacks. If those two players, and it's hard to pick between the two, I think McDuffie might get a little bit more of the spotlight upon him just because of the draft slot. If one of those guys has a bad game, I could see things going south quickly for the Chiefs defense. If both of them step up, I think they're going to be okay.
With that, Jordan, let's get your pick. Chiefs versus Eagles, Sunday afternoon, 5:30 kick. Who wins Super Bowl 57?
I'm thinking the Chiefs. The Eagles, I could absolutely 150% see a path to them winning. I think it's going to be relatively close, a one-score game either way. I'm going Chiefs 31, Eagles 27. I think I would hammer the over for this one. It seems like two great offenses. If it was a repeat of the AFC Championship or it was 23-20, I'd be pretty floored, I think. I know that not all Super Bowls are high scoring, but this one seems to have enough juice to be that type of game. I think it could come down to the final possession. It's going to come down to one play that defines the game. Like when we look back on this one, there's going to be blame to go around for either side, but I think one big play in the fourth quarter is going to be the difference. I think the Chiefs have more ability to pull that out, and they have an inherent advantage in having been there before. I don't think the Eagles are, I don't want to say the spotlight is too bright for them, but I think the Chiefs, having been there, having done that multiple times now, even with their rookies, having the leadership of Andy Reid, having the leadership of Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, all those guys, it's going to help. And even the Chiefs youngsters they've joked about for the past couple of weeks, they're not rookies anymore. I think they're ready for it. We're going to find out very early on if they are. And if they are ready for it, I think the Chiefs come out on top.
Jordan Foote does a spectacular job covering the Kansas City Chiefs over at Arrowhead Report from Sports Illustrated. You can find him on Twitter at Footnoted. That's Foote noted. He joins us here on 580 Sports Talk to break down Super Bowl 57. Jordan, we appreciate the time as always, my friend. Thank you so much for stopping by with us. Enjoy the game on Sunday and enjoy all the chaos that comes with the build-up the rest of the week.
Yep, thanks so much, buddy.
Awesome stuff, as always, from our good pal Jordan Foote. That's going to do it for the 3 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. We've got the national and local news coming up here at the top of the hour. When we come back in the 4 o'clock hour of the show, got some Big 12 basketball to talk about. Michael Swain's going to join us. What is Wrong With You is coming up. All that is coming your way in the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. go. Second hour of 580 Sports Talk going up on a Tuesday. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you on the program. Thank you so much for joining us. Have you missed the first hour of the show? Our look ahead to some major matchups for Super Bowl 57, Random Question Tuesday, our conversation with Jordan Foote. It can all be found at our website, 580wibw.com. Just hover your cursor over the podcast tab. A little menu will pop up. And from there, just click on 580 Sports Talk. Boom. That is where you'll find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show today and every day that we are on the air. Of course, the Big O Tires text line is open to you for your takes on anything we're talking about on the show today. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. Meanwhile, the YouTube comment section is also open. Our YouTube channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. Make sure you go check that out and subscribe if you have not already. Last night's KU recap live on the YouTube. We'll talk about that game coming up in a moment. Tonight, Dan will be at Bramlage Coliseum. We'll both actually be at Bramlage Coliseum tonight, except Dan will be working. I will not be.
You will be there with your face painted with the Power Cat.
Oh, yeah.
And draped in purple.
I've got my K-State shirt in the car. I wore KU to work today because, I mean, of course. But, no, I've got the purple in the car. Got the Power Cat on there, so we'll be enjoying it. Haven't been to a game in over a year now in Manhattan, so I'm excited to go see the Tang Gang in person. I guess for the second time. I saw them at Allen Fieldhouse, but in person at Bramlage Coliseum for the first time. By the way, we have got a comment here from Mark in the YouTube comment section. Hopefully K-State gets a win tonight. Go Wildcats. We'll talk about that game in a little bit. I think K-State's going to get it done, even with Eddie Lampkin playing for TCU. Cats spread, it continues to favor K-State. It has moved quite a bit. It opened at 3.5. I've seen it as big as K-State -5 tonight. Saw that, I believe, from PointsBet earlier today. So we'll preview that game a little bit later on here in this hour. We will talk about KU and Texas in just a few moments, and the fact that the Big 12 race as good as ever with just 7 games to go. How about that? 7 games to go. Also, we've got What Is Wrong With You, and Michael Swain is going to join us to talk all things KU in the Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery later on this hour. And again, if you've got any questions for us, questions for Michael, thoughts, takes, whatever they might be, hit us up on YouTube or on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. KU has needed consistency really all year, but especially since the start of Big 12 play, from players not named Jalen Wilson. They have needed, in many games, Grady Dick, you've got to perform better. And his good has been great this year. He's one of the 10 semifinalists for the Jerry West Shooting Guard of the Year award. Top 10 in the whole country. Grady Dick, that's a big deal. There's 363 starting 2 guards in the country.
Right.
And Wichita's own Grady Dick is in the top 10. That's how good he's been this year. But there have been moments, and I think it's fair to say, and Iowa State on Saturday was a moment like this, where you got to get more out of him. You need to, if you're not shooting, you need to get downhill. His defense has gotten better, but you've got to be giving something. You need to see that more consistently. Kevin McCullough's good has also been extremely good. He's got 16 and 10 kind of potential, or at least like 12 or 13 and 10 kind of potential night in and night out. Doesn't always give that to you. Last night he gave that to you. KJ Adams has been mostly consistent, hit a little bit of a lull during KU's losing streak, but has been mostly consistent. Dwan Harris, we know he's got the highest variance of anybody offensively on the KU offense, really the KU team. Last night, scored 17 points. He shot the ball 16 times, Dan. He told Bill Self, and Self relayed this story to us. Self said, have you ever shot the ball that many times in a single game in your whole life? And Dwan Harris told him, I did once in 5th grade. And he said, Juan, 5th grade does not count.
I had that many shots in a game in 5th grade.
Right. He shot 16 times. Usually you would say 17 points on 16 shots really isn't great. Like, that's not tremendous efficiency. But with him, it actually is a good thing because you need to see him be more aggressive. KU's been needing that with more consistency. Rodney Terry, the head coach of Texas, said after the game, he was asked, what'd you think of Harris's performance? And he said, when he's aggressive, and I know they've been needing that, when he is aggressive, attacking, going downhill, looking to score, he can be really good offensively. Grady Dick added that in, that, hey, he's always good at facilitating and getting us shots, but it's much scarier when we're out on the floor when he's also looking to get his own. He was huge last night. He was awesome the beginning of the game, KU's awesome start to open the game. I think they were up 6-0, 8-2. That was all because of Dwan Harris, because he was deflecting balls. He was stealing them. He got the first basket of the game. He was phenomenal last night. And then you got a bench effort that was almost the best you've seen all year. Self said it was the best he's seen all year. They did have 19 points a couple games ago, but Joseph Yesufu looked as good as he's ever looked at KU. Tied a season high with 14 points. He took a couple of shots that were classic. What are you doing?
Couple of 1-on-3 pull-up 3 from the wing.
Yeah, CJ Moore said this to me the last time. So it would have been last Tuesday, a week ago tonight, at the Sunflower Showdown, when Yesufu took a really bad shot. It was when he flopped on that 3 in the corner.
Yeah, I remember.
And he said CJ told me he plays like he's trying to shoot himself into the rotation. And I thought he was 100% right about this. Like, Yesufu gets on the floor and thinks, I'm worried about getting taken off the floor. I need to make sure I prove that I belong here, that I deserve the minutes, that I should be the sixth man. And I'm going to take this ridiculous shot, and it's going to go in, and it's going to work for me. And too many times it hasn't. But last night, once he settled down, and he knew he wasn't coming off the floor last night because they didn't have bodies. KU had 8 scholarship guys.
Yeah, they weren't going to put Michael Jankovic in the game. I don't care what Bill Self says. Like that's last resort. He would have tried to sneak Sharon Collins into the game, sitting there behind the bench before he put Michael Jankovic in the game.
Sharon was talking trash. He was talking during the game. Got yelled at by a ref. Too funny. But Yesufu calmed down. He was playing really well in transition. For a small guy, he's got great hops. He's the fastest player on the team. There's a lot of value to that. There's something there. He had 14 points. I thought MJ Rice was really good. Only went 1 of 5 shooting. He was rebounding. He had a steal. He was moving the ball well. He looked locked in. I thought Uday was fouling too much, but otherwise he looked pretty good. Had 6 points in the game. You got all of this. That's what KU's been looking for to complement Jalen Wilson, who is going to be an All-American. He's going to be a first-team consensus All-American this year. Last night, though, they didn't compliment Jalen Wilson. They had to pick up the slack for Jalen Wilson. He scored, Dan, 2 points.
Yeah.
He had scored in double figures every single game this year. That is the first 23 games of the year. He scored in double figures. He had 2 points on 1 of 7 shooting yesterday.
Yeah, it wasn't just the foul trouble. He wasn't good. Like,
no.
Texas didn't let him get into the flow of the game. He missed his first couple of shots. They made it hard for him when he tried to penetrate and score at the rim. They had a really good plan for Jalen Wilson, and Wilson made it hard for himself by getting into some foul trouble. But yeah, it was an off night for a great player, an All-American. And you told me before last night's game, hey, Jalen Wilson's going to score 2 total points. I would have said, oh my God, it's going to be a long night for Kansas. But sometimes in a team sport like basketball, you gotta pick up your ace. Like in baseball, sometimes your ace is going to give up 5 runs in 5 innings, and you got to outscore the other team and pick your guy up on the mound. You know, sometimes in football, your offense loses a couple of fumbles. Defense has to go out, get some stops, force some turnovers themselves, keep you in the ball game. You got to pick each other up. And that was, I thought, probably the most encouraging part of last night's win for Kansas is that they did that. They had the rest of the starting lineup lift up Jalen Wilson on a night that was really hard for him. And the bench, too. Yeah. You know, you don't need the bench to come in and produce like the starters. For one, they don't have the same opportunity as the starters. Joseph Yesufu is going to play 10 minutes where Dwan Harris is going to play 30. You expect more production, raw numbers from your starters. That's why they're your starters. That's why they're on the floor at the beginning of the game. That's why they're on the floor to close the game out. But the one thing you can always get from your bench, effort. And I thought it was very clear that whatever message Bill Self delivered to his reserves, his available guys off the bench last night, play hard was a big part of that message because those dudes were playing hard. MJ Rice ripping the ball away from veteran Texas players. Like, he played his tail off. Ernest Uday, I thought that was his best game. Yeah, little undisciplined sometimes on defense with the fouls, but showing a nice touch on the pass, running the rim for some alley-oops, and getting disruptive with his hands in passing lanes. Joseph Yesufu, best game of the season for him by far. Effort, though, is what led to that. Energy is what led to that. That's what you want from your guys off the bench. Play hard.
Mm-hmm.
You're only going to be out there maybe 5 minutes at a time. Go be hell on earth to play against in those 5 minutes. Go be stubborn on defense. Go get an offensive rebound. Get a deflection. Get a steal. Force a turnover. I loved that from the KU bench. And I hope that that's an identity because, look, yeah, there are going to be nights when the shots fall. There are going to be nights when the shots don't. There are going to be nights when you play against really good teams. There are going to be nights you play against struggling teams. But effort and energy are a choice. And KU's reserves made the choice to play with that energy last night. And I thought that was super. I thought that was really, really encouraging. Back to your point about Harris. If you look at his game log, it's really easy to pick out the games where KU hasn't won in Big 12 play. Against TCU, Harris is 0 for 4 from the field in 38 minutes. Had 8 assists, but also had 3 turnovers. Against K-State, he had 3 points in 43 minutes. 1 of 6 from behind the arc. Had 11 assists, but turned the ball over 4 times. Against Baylor.
Which is a career high, by the way.
Yeah. Against Baylor, 2 points on 1 of 5 shooting, 4 assists, 4 turnovers. A 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. In Ames on Saturday, 2 points on 1 of 5 shooting, 3 assists, 2 turnovers. Like, Jalen Wilson's the best player, and he's going to be the All-American, and he's going to get all of those accolades. But DeJuan Harris might be the most important guy when it comes to his ceiling raises everybody else's ceiling. He might be the ceiling raiser for this team with his offensive contributions, defensive contributions, playing smart, taking care of the basketball. They can't win if he doesn't play well. He has to be great. He has to score 17 every night. Like, they've won games against good. They beat Iowa State at home and he didn't score. They beat Oklahoma State at home. He had 6 points in that game. Like, they can win without him going crazy on offense.
But it helps.
Yeah, when he scores in double digits in conference play, they're 5-0. And he's capable of getting to the rim and hitting that floater, and just that aggressiveness means you have to guard him. And if you have to guard him, that's one less guy you can commit to helping on Jalen Wilson or helping on Grady Dick or helping on the rim runner, KJ Adams, or helping on McCullough. So it just opens everything up for everybody else. I just think he's so important, and he's capable of playing at that level, I think, every night. And if he does, KU has as high a ceiling as any team you can name in the country.
And there's an element of duh to that, right? Like, the two guys who have the ball in their hands the most are DeJuan Harris and Jalen Wilson. Sometimes Jalen has the ball the most in a given game because nobody for KU can score, and he's got to go get you 25 points to even keep you in the contest. But generally, if you're running half-court offense, you're running the break, it's DeJuan Harris who's got the ball in his hands the most. He's the one facilitating. He's finding the open guys. But when he can get downhill, he does have a good floater. He's a tremendous finisher. He had, I think, 3 different reverse layups. I know you tweeted about the one. It was the last one he had. I don't even know if he looked at the rim. He went straight under the basket, flipped it up off the very top of the backboard. It falls through the net, didn't even move.
I thought he airballed it. Like, on TV, the net didn't move. I thought he just missed everything. No, straight through.
He's got a great touch at the rim. There is an offensive game there, but he, and to a lesser degree, Yesufu, and I only bring him up because his teammates mentioned it during postgame. Both Harris and Dick both said during postgame press conferences, hey, we know Yesufu can score. Like, we see it every day in practice. He might be among the most gifted scorers along with Dick on the whole team. But it just hasn't translated to games for, mental reasons or because of opportunity or whatever. They need that. And for Harris, it's even more to the point that, look, you're out there. He played 34 minutes in the game yesterday. That's probably the minimum he's going to play in a game going forward. He's got to be confident to either shoot the ball from 3 and make a couple, or if that's not falling, he's got to be willing to get into the paint and make a shot. And he said that Texas defended him a little bit differently. He's not used to being face guarded. He said there were possessions where they were actually doing that to him, but that made it easy for him to then move the ball. He ended up with 5 assists in the game because, all right, you're going to take me away. If you're spending all that attention on me, who's option 5 to score the ball, someone else is going to end up being open. It was a really impressive day. One other thing that is extremely impressive, not only did KU score 88 points and Jalen Wilson had 2 of them, KU scored 88 points with 2 3-pointers. They had 22 made free throws in the game on 28 attempts. That's a good number for KU. That's good shooting percentage from the free throw line. They made 2 threes. They had 60 points on 2-point field goals yesterday. They scored 88. Bill Self loves that, adores scoring that many points in the paint. It just comes differently than KU obviously used to do when they'd play with the Twin Tower lineup. But that was as impressive a win for KU as they've had all season.
Because Texas is damn good. I want to spare a thought for the Texas Longhorns.
Marcus Carr was about to live in my dreams forever had Texas pulled off the comeback.
Does any team in the conference make more tough shots than Texas? I mean, like contested, mid-range, hand-in-face shots. Texas makes so many tough shots. They got... they came into the year as a top 10 team, and some of that was the reputation of the guy who's no longer their head coach. Mm-hmm. But they've got vets, right? They've got guys who played a lot of college basketball. They've got Marcus Carr, and they've got Serge Rice, and they've got Timmy Allen's played a lot of ball. Christian Bishop is a vet. Brock Cunningham off the bench has played a lot. Dylan Disu's played a lot. They got like 5 seniors or grad transfers in their rotation. So being a veteran team obviously helps them out a lot and has, I think, helped develop the mental toughness that they have as a group. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you go through the thing that they've gone through this year where the guy who was your coach, who was your leader, who you looked up to, does something so heinous off the court that it cost him his job. And you've got to process that. And all the while, you got a season to play and a conference title to try and go win. And the fact that they've maintained a spot at the top of the conference standings through all of this is a testament to just how many bucket getters they've got. Mm-hmm. They got dudes who can score.
Yep.
Like, honestly, there were times I thought they just should have played one-on-one ISO ball the entire second half and just picked a matchup and just gone with it, whether it was Timmy Allen backing down Grady Dick or Marcus Carr on a switch, just taking his guy to the rack.
Yep.
Like, they've got maybe the best one-on-one guys in the conference, like that can just break you
kind
down.
of NBA style, really.
It really, yeah. It is. It's kind of like they kind of feel like an NBA team in that way. The other thing that I think stands out about Texas, so Rodney Terry is their interim coach. Mm-hmm. I had made a joke. I don't remember if I said it on the air on Monday, but I know I tweeted about it and I was talking to you and Jake off the air about Serge Rice. Mm-hmm. Doesn't start games, but at Bramlage, first minute of the game, like he's still in his warm-up pants, but he's like off the bench and he's directing his teammates and yelling at his teammates like he's an assistant coach. And then Chris Budden passes along during the broadcast last night an anecdote. It was in the second half. It was during one of the I think it was one of the TV timeouts, but it was at a stoppage of play, and the teams are huddled. And Marcus Carr grabs the whiteboard and starts drawing things up on the whiteboard. So Texas, my theory, Rodney Terry is the chaperone more than he's the coach. And maybe that's mean, but this feels like those guys who are vets, who are 4th, 5th, maybe even 6th year college basketball players.
12th year if you're Brock Cunningham.
Those guys are coaching the basketball team.
Which, if you're on a heater, is probably really good because those guys they're feeling it, so they probably have a good grasp on what's working. If you hit a roadblock, though, that is when things completely fall apart. And that, to me, says, do not pick Texas to go very far in the NCAA tournament. That's what that screams to me. Because suddenly, maybe you don't have a great grasp on how a game is unfolding. Oh, no. That would not feel very good.
I have a ton of admiration. I don't get to watch every second of every Big 12 game. I've seen a little bit of Texas, but of course, their first game against K-State was on the Longhorn Network.
Right.
So didn't get to see that. But having watched them in person Saturday, watched them on TV last night, really watched Texas, I've got a new appreciation for just how good they are, why they're in a tie for first, half a game lead in the conference, and just a lot of respect, not just for how talented their guys are, but how mentally tough they are. Yeah. Like, that was a tidal wave that KU hit them with to start that game. They had all the energy. They had some dunks. Crowd was rocking. Yeah, they took that 30-16 lead off of the Grady Dick 3-pointer. And I had a thought that, okay, this might turn into a blowout tonight. Texas just wouldn't let it. They're too mentally tough.
Yeah.
So, I got a lot of respect for them.
They were able to get, after going down 30-16, they got the game tied at 43 all.
Yeah.
That's a really impressive outing for Texas. Now you end up with a far more interesting Big 12 race. Had KU lost yesterday, they were effectively eliminated. They would have been 3 games out with only 7 to play. You probably are not going to make that up. Instead, we are back to having 6 teams within a game and a half of first place. And I want to throw this in there. There's a 7th team that's only 2.5 out. I'm not saying Oklahoma State's going to win the league, but they're lingering.
They're playing a lot better.
Yeah,
too.
they are.
Like they found something with Caleb Boone kind of being a go-to guy for them and really, really emerging as a guy who's a big-time offensive option. I like the way they play. Like I haven't liked I was talking to Jake about this off the air earlier today too. I haven't liked watching Mike Boynton's teams at Oklahoma State because they haven't had a lot of really good players,
right?
Other than the Cade Cunningham year. But I like this Oklahoma State team. Like they still don't have a ton of studs, but they play their tails off and guys know their roles and they've got some shot makers and they rebound like crazy. They protect the rim like crazy. They're athletic. Like they're not going to be fun to play a second time around for anybody.
I mean, Boo's the best offensive player they've had since Cunningham, and the supporting cast around Cade Cunningham was not very good.
No, it was Cade and the Pips.
Yeah, truly, they had nothing else. By the way, I just found out this weekend Ice Likely is still playing college basketball.
He sure is.
Yeah, he's at Ohio State.
Ohio State, yeah, he's in the Big Ten.
He went from Big 12 Oklahoma State to essentially Big 10 Oklahoma State. It's very funny. But now KU is a game behind. Texas is 8-3. Iowa State is 7-3. They are playing tomorrow, I believe. Yeah, they play tomorrow. They will be taking on West Virginia in Morgantown. West Virginia's been a little bit better. Eric Stevenson decided maybe I should make shots instead of miss them.
They dropped an anvil on Oklahoma on Saturday.
They did.
Absolutely thrashed them. No easy games. Like, that's just it. Jay Billis said this on the broadcast last night. If you are playing in the Big 12, you are either running into a truly great team or you are running into a desperate team.
Yeah.
And some nights, like last night for Texas, it was both.
You ran into both.
Tonight for TCU, it's both.
Yep. Absolutely true. We'll preview that game, K-State versus TCU, in a little bit. We'll talk more KU later this hour with Michael Swain, but we've got What Is Wrong With You coming up next here on 580 Sports Talk. Time to find our daily winner in What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. Our current winner for the week is the 21-year-old from Las Vegas who made the trip to Des Moines, got naked on the 18th floor of the Des Moines downtown Marriott, and ran around threatening someone with a toilet plunger. Yes, you heard that correctly. Went from Vegas to Des Moines and got naked and attacked someone with a toilet plunger.
You know what they say about the 18th floor at the Des Moines downtown Marriott.
What happens there stays there. Our stories for today, I will go first. We've got a good old-fashioned chicken attack. Back on February 2nd, a Minnesota woman was jailed for domestic assault after allegedly hitting her boyfriend in the head with a whole chicken.
Wow.
We go to the town of Eagle Lake, and we meet 36-year-old Natalie Broomer and her boyfriend. The man who had been at a bar with Broomer said she was hitting him and spitting in his face while they were on their way home. Clearly, this couple has some major issues. Upon arriving at their residence, the man alleged, Broomer, quote, hit him with a whole chicken in the back of his head. And according to the police, he still had chicken residue in his hair when they arrived.
What is chicken residue? That is gross.
Got some juice. Got some innards.
Like, hold on here. Like, what, is this one of those like frozen joints, or was it like a rotisserie chicken you get at the grocery store?
That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, a rotisserie chicken would be a whole chicken.
Yeah, that'd be pretty light, and I could definitely see that leaving some residue.
Yeah, I would imagine we're talking rotisserie. I feel like it'd be hard to lift up a whole chicken.
Yes.
And throw it at someone's head. When the police sought to place Broomer under arrest at their home, she struggled with them and, quote, began pulling her hands away from the officers, requiring multiple attempts to get her handcuffed. Then, while being escorted from the home, Broomer continued to yell, attempted to pull her arms away, and kicked her legs around. She has been charged with domestic assault and obstructing police. She was arrested in December of 2021 for assaulting the same man. That case is still pending. Maybe break up.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Says they've been together for 10 years.
I would not have let it go on that long.
No.
One time is too many times. You start bringing out the chicken, we've gone way too far.
Yeah, it can't come back from you whomping me on the head with a chicken. Can't do it.
Terrible. What do you have for today?
All right, we are going to Moscow, where somebody tried to steal Vladimir Lenin.
Oh.
An intoxicated man, I feel like that detail is extraneous, has been taken into custody for trying to steal Vladimir Lenin's body from his namesake mausoleum in Red Square. The incident took place overnight February 6th. A man was detained when he tried to break into the mausoleum where Vladimir Lenin's body lies and steal it. The individual in custody was later discovered to have been intoxicated. So, for those who don't know, Vladimir Lenin, for better or for worse, probably mostly for worse, one of the most influential political figures of the 20th century, is interred at Red Square. Mm-hmm. It is Lenin's mausoleum. And his body is there in like full view. Like you roll up and there he is, laying there forever. Somebody had the notion to steal Vladimir Lenin.
This reminds me, I don't know if it's a great connection, but it reminds me, there was a show, it was called Knights of Prosperity. It was on ABC. I think it lasted like an episode and a half. But their whole tagline, like the hook in their commercial previewing it, was three guys saying, let's kidnap Mick Jagger. That was their bit. Like that was what led into the first episode.
I feel like this here is the Russian equivalent of National Treasure.
Yeah,
like,
that
like,
works too.
You got like a Russian version of Nicolas Cage. Like, I'm going to steal Vladimir Lenin.
Let's kidnap the corpse of Vladimir Lenin.
What's the end game? You got Vladdy home with you. What do you do at that point? Prop him up and ask him questions?
Ransom? I don't know. I have no idea. Who you got for today?
Guy tried to kidnap Lenin.
Yeah. I'm going to imagine there's decent security at Lenin's tomb. Just a thought.
Not really even a tomb. It's like,
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think it's under the ground. I think it's like there, like first floor. And to your right, Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov.
Yes, I will join you in that. But does it take down the gentleman who got naked and attacked someone with a plunger in a Des Moines Marriott?
If only because I don't want to talk about Vladimir Lenin any more than I already have.
All right, fair enough. That'll be our winner then. Once again today in What Is Wrong With You. Let's take a timeout. Michael Swain will join us next on 580 Sports Talk. Michael Swain of Fog.net joins us here on 580 Sports Talk for Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by our good friends at the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence at the corner of Castle and 23rd Street. Stop on by if you can't make it out to Norman, Oklahoma for the KU game coming up on Saturday. Perfect place to go watch the game is at the 23rd Street Brewery. Great place, for beer, for food, and to hang out with your friends. That, again, is at the corner of 23rd and Castle in Lawrence. Michael, would you have ever expected to see KU put up 88 points in a game this year in which their best player, a surefire consensus first-team All-American, got all of 2 points? Did you think that was possible?
No, I didn't. I think that's what makes yesterday's performance so impressive. And that, taking into account too, KU made 2 threes. So if you're looking at, the pathway to score 88 points, you'd think, okay, Grady Dick is going to make like 7 threes. He's going to make like a career high, most for a Kansas player. No, Kansas made 2 threes. I think it shows how poor of a game plan Texas had, where I think they really dared KU to try and beat them in backdoor cuts. And that's how this team can perform at its best. It's really struggled when it's gone up against teams that have made it be a jump shooting squad. So I think overall, collectively, just an incredible performance. Grady Dick to only have one guy score 20 points and score 88. I think that's really impressive. I think it points to just the overall collective effort that this team had.
Outside of Jalen Wilson's surprising 2-point performance, who was the best performer for KU yesterday, in your opinion?
Well, I think probably DeJuan Harris, because so much of this season Bill Self has spent it talking about wanting DeJuan to be in attack mode and be aggressive and go attack the paint. And I think at times he's just been very passive, and he even had this observation post-game where he kind of talked about it, where he's like, hey, DeJuan at times this year has just been passive. He's been a possession point guard, and that's not who he needs to be for Kansas this year. He can be that last year, and you're okay. But this year, he needs to go out and score 8 points a game. And I think recently you've seen him be more passive, and then to all of a sudden see him on the first possession of the game go attack off the bounce, go get to the rim. I think you could see that a fire got lit under him where he knew that this was a game where he had to go do it. I mean, he made a career high 7 twos, career high 16 shot attempts, just overall an aggressive performance. And I think just what he did in terms of passing, rebounding, he's a standout performer, even if someone like Joseph Yesufu maybe had a career night too.
What is it going to take to get that sort of offensive aggressiveness more consistently from DeJuan Harris? We took a look at it earlier on in this hour here on the show, that the games where he has done effectively nothing offensively, at least in terms of scoring the ball, well, KU has lost those games. But when he's gotten to double figures, KU is undefeated in those contests. He doesn't need to get to 10 plus every game, but we hear it all the time, Michael, that Bill Self says, I tell him to be aggressive. He needs to be aggressive. We heard Grady Dick say it last night. When he is facilitating and going and getting his own, that makes our offense even scarier. What is it going to take to get that aggressiveness more consistently?
Well, I wonder if there's just a mentality switch. I think for so much of DeJuan's career, he's been a player that is a very traditional point guard, right? He wants to get other guys involved. He loves the assists more than a made layup or a made dunk. And I think for him, it's about a transition of, hey, this year, next year, if you want to even look ahead to that, he has to be a scorer, because he's at the age now where he is good enough all around where he can score the basketball. And I look at the 2-point numbers. The 3-point attempts are the same game to game, but he's attempting almost twice as many 2-point attempts in a Kansas win as he is in a loss. That points to the mentality. And I think it's just going to come from him being more aggressive, him having his own self-confidence to go out and do it. And Bill Self has talked too that, hey, DeJuan in practice is as good of a shooter as Grady Dick is, but he just doesn't shoot it much in the game, and maybe in the game he thinks about it too much. So I think it should be a mentality shift that maybe takes place over the final third of the season this year and really over the offseason heading into next year.
Our guest is Michael Swain of Fog.net, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, and he joins us every Tuesday on the program for Jayhawk Weekly, sponsored by 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. When I go to 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence and I order up a cold one and the buffalo chicken mac and cheese, I'm feeling like Bill Self with all that Bill Self to myself. It is a taste sensation at the 23rd Street Brewery.
Shout out to Redhead. Miss that guy.
It's 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. We appreciate their support of Jayhawk Weekly with Michael Swain. Michael, the bench was terrific last night. It was short, but it was sweet, with Joe Yesufu playing well, tying a season high with 14 points. Good minutes from Ernest Uday and MJ Rice as well. Thought the effort and the energy really stood out. But what was the most impressive part of the bench performance to you, as far as what they could do or what they did last night that could be replicable down the stretch?
Well, Bill Self likes to call it, energy givers and energy takers. Last year, KU had 2 energy givers in Remy Martin and Mitch Lightfoot off the bench. This year, KU's had a lot of energy takers, right? MJ Rice has not brought energy every night. Joseph Yesufu hasn't always had energy. Ernest Uday, Zach Clemens, Zuby Ejiofor haven't always had energy. And what you saw last night was a bench unit that came off wanting to provide that spark and that energy. And I think that's, we talk about a mindset shift with DeJuan Harris. Well, I think that mindset shift needs to happen with the bench, because you look at what Kansas is facing now going forward, where the schedule does not get lighter, right? You're playing still good teams, even if it's not Iowa State, K-State, Texas. But these starters are going to start to wear down if they keep playing 35, 40 minutes in that range. And you need these bench guys to come in and give good minutes, where maybe DeJuan isn't having to play 38, 39, 40 minutes, maybe he's playing 33 or 34 minutes and he's able to go, kind of balls to the wall, for lack of a better term, the entire time. So I think the bench, what they brought was energy. And I think MJ Rice is the perfect example. He's someone that, 50-something hours prior was an enigma against Iowa State, right? Missed assignments, didn't bring much energy, wasn't competing. And then you see him go for loose balls, grab rebounds. It just looks like a totally different player. And so if they can get that sort of energy off the bench, it doesn't even matter if Joseph Yesu scores in double digits or if MJ Rice scores or Ernest Uday. But can they just bring the energy and help KU's starters maybe not have to carry the load for all 40 minutes?
It's hard to win on the road in this league. Kansas hits the road for 2 straight. After last night's game, they're in Norman Saturday. They got to go to Stillwater and play Oklahoma State, who's really played well of late after that. The road has been a tough one for Kansas, and I think in some ways that's been a little unexpected given the fact that I know it's harder to play on the road than at home, but you'd think some of KU's veterans who've been around the Big 12 would be able to handle those road environments in ways better than maybe guys like McCullough and Harris have to this point. What has to happen for KU to be a better road team? Because that might be the difference for them between winning the league and not winning the league.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you have to differentiate too, right? Think about early in conference play. They beat West Virginia and Texas Tech on the road. And then, of course, you're playing really good teams, right? K-State, Iowa State, those are really 2 good teams. And I look at these 2 upcoming games against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, and I say, can Kansas bring the energy? Because you go away from home, Bill Self has talked about it. You need a tight huddle. You need everyone pulling in the same direction. Well, we didn't see that against Iowa State, but can they show it against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State? I think an underrated part of the Oklahoma State game going to next Tuesday, is the injury to Avery Anderson, where he's done for the year now. And he was averaging, I believe, like 11 points per game, their second leading scorer, and he's done for the season now. So that's a loss that helps Kansas. But you look at Oklahoma and the matchup problems they provide at center, and I think how good they've played during spurts at home, where you look at, right, they beat Alabama at home and smoked them, right? Like, you have to come and show up to play against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State on the road. And I wonder if a stretch like this, where you have the loss against Iowa State, you see how imperative energy is, then you play against Texas, beat them, and again, you see how imperative that is. And then now they get some time off, right? This isn't a Tuesday, Saturday. This is a Monday, Saturday, where today's an off day. They'll probably get back on Wednesday, do some light stuff. Thursday, they'll get into it more, and then Friday, they'll travel. So I just look at this week and I say, it's setting up where there's no excuses. They have to come out and play with energy at Oklahoma. And if they don't, then you really got to start looking at kind of the mindset and the psyche of the team rather than just the physical ability.
Couple more questions for Michael Swain of Fog.net. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can find Michael on Twitter at mswain247, and he joins us every Tuesday here for Jayhawk Weekly on 580 Sports Talk. Michael, in a perfect world, and perfect, I mean Bobby Pettiford is also healthy, is Joseph Yesufu still your best option as point guard number 2?
Well, no, because I don't think he's really a point guard. And I think you look last night, right? Joseph Yesufu, he was taking some of the Pettiford minutes, but who was handling the ball when Yesufu was on the floor? It was Kevin McCullough. And you saw McCullough finish with, I believe, 6 assists. I think a season high, Big 12 high for him. But, Yesufu's an off-ball guard, right? I think he's playing alongside DeJuan, maybe that can work. But, I don't know if you want Yesufu handling the ball all the time. I think you saw a couple of times in the second half where Yesufu started dribbling. The first action didn't work, and he's like, all right, well, it's Joe Yesufu time. Here we go. Pull up mid-range jumper that maybe isn't the best shot. So I look at it and say, if you're looking for someone to maybe spell DeJuan Harris, maybe it is putting Yesufu and McCullough in at the same time, where maybe McCullough can help make up for some of the defensive deficiencies that Yesufu has, while also allowing him to go be a scoring guard where it's off the ball. He doesn't have to worry about initiating the action. He can worry about when he gets the ball, attack, go to the rim, try and knock down a shot, be kind of the Drake version of Yesufu that we've seen, rather than being the Kansas version where I think at times last year it was a square peg in a round hole trying to make him an on-ball guard, when I think in reality, in this scheme, this system, he's an off-ball guard.
Who takes funnier heat checks, Joseph Yesufu or David McCormick?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think Yesufu, just because you can just tell, Like it's so easy to tell when he's about to do it.
He hates passing.
It's dribble, and then you're like, oh, here we go. Basically, if he takes 2 dribbles, a shot's going up.
You can hear him do, the Philip Seymour Hoffman bit in Along Came Polly. You can almost hear the internal monologue of Joe Yesufu. Yeah, let it rain.
Exactly.
I did see someone, though, tweet out the screenshot of McCormick last year. It must have been last year against Kentucky when he pulled up from just behind the free throw line. KU's down 8. There's no need to shoot the ball early in the clock, pulling up for the long 2. That's one of the funniest moments in game in KU memory as of late, was McCormick pulling up that shot. But Yesufu seems to do it every game, Michael. It's like I said this earlier, and CJ Moore of The Athletic said this to me last night or last week, actually, during the game against K-State, that when he comes in the game, it almost feels like he feels the need to shoot himself into more minutes, and that's why he takes some of these very contested or very long threes.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and I think Bill Self talked about it, where I think knowing that Yesufu, and I think Joe, when he went in the game last night, is thinking, hey, they can't take me out. Who are they going to take me out for? Bobby, he's in street clothes, So I think that allows him to think, all right, here we go. I can go play my way into this game, not feel like I have to go in and shoot my way into the game. And I think that's just a more healthy mindset for someone like him, who is a great person and a great kid by all accounts, and I think maybe just thinks too much. And under Bill Self, I think that's always an issue, right? He wants players not to think, but everything he asks of you is to think. So I think it's a tough kind of tug and pull with someone like Yesufu, and I think that this situation is kind of perfect for him now.
Last thing I've got for you, Michael, what right now would you say are the odds KU wins a share, at least, of the Big 12 title?
Ooh, plus money for sure, like plus 300. I don't know what the implied odds of that are, but the schedule isn't the hardest, but it's also not the lightest. I look at Texas. They play at TCU, at Baylor, and then at home to KU to close out conference play. Talk about a closing stretch to try and win a title. That's possible. And then obviously KU doesn't play Iowa State or K-State again, so you can't really control your own destiny there. But I think they can. I think we're kind of seeing potentially the start of a run, because just the way this week works out, there's no excuse for them not to win 3 games. And then you do that, and then all of a sudden it's Baylor, and then you're really into the home stretch. So I think there's a really good chance of it.
Michael Swain covers the Kansas Jayhawks better than anybody over at fog.net. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can find him on Twitter as well. His handle is at @mswain247, and he joins us every Tuesday for Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. Michael, as always, we appreciate the time. What's the Super Bowl platter going to look like on Sunday for you?
Oh, I got to get some Mott sticks. I've not had them in forever, and that's all I've been thinking about.
Oh, man, mozzarella sticks. That's a good call. My wife and I still have to figure out what we're going to have for our spread on Sunday, so I might have to enter that into the mix. Michael, we appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week.
Definitely. Thanks, guys.
That is Michael Swain from fog.net. Dang, that sounds really good.
That's a solid choice.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with those.
No, you really can't.
Any fried cheese, like a cheese curd, like.
We have to stop talking about food on the show, because I usually will eat lunch around 1:30, so I'm not starving during the show, and then I end up hungry anyway.
Yeah, I had to do an early lunch anyway because I was on crosstalk, so your boy is starving.
Hey, you got a media meal
I
coming your
do.
way, though.
I got the Derby Dining going to hook me up tonight.
There you go. Coming up in the 5 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk, we'll get to today's 580 Sports Talk headlines. We will also preview K-State versus Baylor coming up tonight. Against TCU, Purple Baylor. That's coming up tonight. TCU fans will hate me for that. We'll get to all that and more coming up in the 5 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 1 hour to go on 580 Sports Talk on this Tuesday afternoon. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, Brendan Dorzinski and Dan Lucero. That's your us here on the program. You are welcome to be a part of the show as well on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. You can also chime in the YouTube comments. Our YouTube channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. Thank you for all of you who are watching and listening out there on the other side of these microphones. Don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, what's taking you so long? Go subscribe, excuse me. Last night's KU instant recap show, it's up there on the YouTube channel right now. Dan has your recap tonight from Bramlage Coliseum that'll go live on YouTube too. So better time now to subscribe than ever before. And, well, the next chance you get a chance to subscribe is the next best time to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Sports on 580 WIBW. Just take that sentence for, what it's worth. It was a mess of the English language, but whatever, you get my point.
Do you need some help, or you need a life preserver?
I'm just so jacked up for K-State basketball tonight that I can't control it.
You're
I can't
muddled.
contain my excitement for it. It'll be the first time I've been to Bramlage as a fan since January 20-somethingth of last year. We saw K-State beat Texas Tech on a Saturday. Man, you watch this K-State team play and the up and down, fast-paced kind of basketball, high-scoring affair, and you think, what the hell is wrong with you, Bruce Weber? Why did you butcher this beautiful sport so badly for years with those offenses? Why did you recruit Antonio Gordon or the like? That's probably mean.
No, probably, man.
It also is true. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's true.
How are those guys doing? I wonder.
How
are
a
those
great
transfers?
question. Dejuan Gordon is still playing somewhere, I think.
Yeah.
He transferred again out of Missouri. He's at New Mexico State now. Antonio Gordon.
Davion Bradford's got 10 points a game, 10 minutes a game. Excuse me, not 10 points. 10 minutes a game off the bench for Wake Forest.
Oh, that's
Back
nice.
up big, playing quite a bit.
Oh, well, Antonio Gordon is at Southeast Louisiana and is averaging less than 5 points a game.
Oh.
So,
let's see. Selton Miguel averaging 10.5 a game for South Florida.
really?
Yeah.
Good for him. Fitz used to always say he thought of that group for that unfortunate era, he thought he was the one who had the most juice to him.
Yeah. No, I thought there was some potential for him. Luke Kasubke shooting 39% from three for Illinois State, averaging close to 8 points a game for the Redbirds.
All right.
There's
There's a big Doug Collins statue outside of their arena.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
I think it's Doug Collins Arena.
It
in
is, yeah.
fact. Yes, the greatest Redbird of them all. Let's see. Logan Landers, 12 games appeared in this year for Grand Canyon. Casey Eziagu has started 22 games for Sam Houston State, averaging 5 points a night, 3.5 boards.
Where's Sir Yi Lewis?
Um,
I'm about to look that up. He is currently playing for Rice.
Oh,
3.5 points a game. He's shooting 60% from the floor. Still scoring 3.5 points a game. Man, these were some bums. This roster sucked, man. I'm just looking at last year's team. Good God. Pac's having a good year.
yes. Yeah, the obvious one, like the one that if K-State could take any of them back, it'd be Nigel Pack. 12 points a game for Miami, shooting 40% from deep.
They walloped Duke last night.
They put it on the Blue
Duke
Devils.
stinks. They're bad.
They're not bad.
They might be bad.
I don't think they're bad. I just think they're not Duke.
Is it a Shire thing? Is it just a turnover thing? Is it the guys just aren't the right guys?
Well, their two highest profile freshman recruits, they haven't really gotten anything out of this year. Derek Whitehead and Derek Lively were supposed to be awesome, and Whitehead's been hurt, Lively's been hurt. So I think probably if those two had been as advertised, they'd be a lot better. Because the Filipowski kid is really good. Yeah, I just like they feel like kind of just a decent college basketball team, which is not what you expect Duke to be.
No. By the way, Carlton Lingard is at UTSA.
Oh,
There's another one for you. We're going to preview some K-State basketball coming up later on in the hour, by the way. This is not just going to be a tear apart the last 3 years of Wildcats basketball hour.
Let's remember some guys.
Let's remember some really bad offensive basketball players. All right, I'm done. That's enough. We will also get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines here in just a moment. And again, you're welcome to chime in with your thoughts on anything we're talking about today on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. As well as on the YouTube channel, Sports on 580 WIBW. Let's get to it with our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. Go visit them online at bluedotkansas.com. Headline number one for me, Dan. Let's get to some of the news and notes from Super Bowl opening night, media night yesterday. The quarterbacks obviously took center stage. There were lines to go see Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes last night. Nothing too out of the ordinary from either of them. Mahomes had some nice words about his dad and how he wouldn't be in the position he's in if it wasn't for his dad. There is a literal element to that, but also growing up the son of a professional athlete in locker rooms, clubhouses, things like that. That probably does help. I imagine you're a little bit more used to the grind of being a professional athlete when you were exposed to that from a young age.
Yeah, I've always thought that was a huge advantage for Patrick Mahomes, learning how to be a professional, how to be a professional athlete, how to carry yourself that way, how to train and how to go about a daily routine. I've always thought that that was something that very clearly from a young, from the start of his professional career, he had an idea of what kind of professional he wanted to be. And I think that his background had a huge role in that.
And Mahomes also said he's feeling a lot better. Ankle's doing way better than it was even a week ago, certainly more than 2 weeks ago. So he's doing well. Said he would play through anything, and that he even plays through all the times that Travis Kelce hurts his feelings during the week.
Yeah,
so he
I
hurts
saw
his
that.
feelings every day.
That was pretty funny.
That was very funny. Speaking of Travis Kelce, he and his brother Jason, probably the next two biggest stars of the night after the two quarterbacks. Their mom showed up. Donna Kelce showed up and brought cookies to both of them. That kind of went viral last night while the two of them were being interviewed on TV. She, of course, was wearing her split jersey, her 87-62 red and midnight green jersey, because, of course, she was. We got some real stupid questions because that's always what happens at Super Bowl opening night. Nick Sirianni was asked if the Super Bowl is a must-win game. Okay, great. That's awesome stuff. He was also asked, this made me mad. Okay, this really frustrated me. Nick Sirianni was asked who on the Eagles he would not let his daughter date. His daughter went viral for her reaction during his press conference after the NFC Championship game because she's 5 years old. She is a child, a small child. That's not funny. That's not cute. That's gross.
It's a gross question if he had a 25-year-old daughter.
It's gross and inappropriate. And like, you can do the dumb media day stuff. Like, that's fine. Andy Reid was asked about barbecue and food. Like, okay, funny.
Mm-hmm.
Why? We're beyond that. We as a society are beyond that being funny.
That's, morning zoo crew nonsense. I bet the listeners to Weenie in the Butt really enjoyed their viral moment talking
in the
to
morning
Sirianni on the radio.
But like, I'm sure at one point in time that was more acceptable than it is now, and it's not like, oh, lighten up. No, it's just gross. It's weird and inappropriate, and I didn't like it. Andy Reid was asked a lot about food, though. Said he loved playing in Mexico City and that he loves Mexican food. Shocking. He also said that he has never been to a barbecue place in Kansas City that was bad, that he has liked every place he's been to.
Facts. Me and Andy Reid are the same.
Juju was asked about barbecue. He put Gates last. He had Joe's third. He listed 5. Number 1, who did he put at number 1? He had Q39 on his list. He had Joe's second. I know he had Gates last. Now I got to go find who he put.
Was it Jack Stack?
It was Jack Stack, I think. Yeah. Jack Stack's good.
Yeah.
That's my wife's favorite.
Yeah. A lot of people put Jack Stack at the top of their list. I think it's good. I probably got to go there again. Like any place I feel like to appreciate them, you have to go more than once. Like I've been to Gates a handful of times. I've been to Joe's a handful of times, but I've only been to Q39 once. I've only been to Jack Stack once. So
So his top 5: Jack Stack, Q39, Joe's, Arthur Bryant's, Gates. I love Bryant's.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I like Arthur Bryant's too. I like the ambiance. I like the decor.
Yeah, I'm a big Bryant's guy. Joe's is my favorite, though. I'm a Joe's guy.
Yeah, man, that was like my first experience was Joe's, and I got so much food.
I could eat a Z-Man any day, any time of day, no matter how hungry I am.
Facts.
I can put down a Z-Man.
Absolutely.
Also,
God, I'm hungry again. We got to quit talking about food.
Know. Well, okay. Well, my last headline for something Andy Reid said yesterday. So Charles McDonald is an NFL writer for Yahoo.com. He has previously worked for about 100 different outlets. He was at SB Nation. He was at Underdog Fantasy. He's been all over the place. He shared a story on Twitter several years ago now about meeting Andy Reid at the Indianapolis airport. I think it was after the combine.
Yeah.
But they were at the Indianapolis airport, and they just got to talking. He said, hey, I'm a young NFL writer. I work for SB Nation. Great to meet you. They just talked, and Andy Reid gave him a 7-cheese mac and cheese recipe. This went viral on Twitter at the time. Everyone's, Andy Reid just won a Super Bowl, and he's talking about
sharing his mac and cheese recipe with a stranger.
Right.
Yes.
So Charles McDonald asked Andy Reid about it again yesterday at opening night for the Super Bowl week, and Andy Reid remembered. You can see there's video out there. His face lights up instantly. And because McDonald goes, hey, Andy, I met you at the Indianapolis airport 3 years ago, and you shared with me your 7-cheese mac and cheese recipe. And Andy Reid looks like it was the best day of his life. He's like, oh, yeah. And he points at him like, oh, yeah, I remember. And he said, yeah, you told me you really only need 5, but 7's ideal. And he goes, that's right. You really do only need 5. But if you get 7, that's the best. So most of Andy Reid's questions were about food, unsurprisingly. That was essentially opening night for Super Bowl week. That's all it was. Weird questions to Nick Sirianni and then questions about barbecue. I would like to put this out there. And I think I've become sensitive to this because my favorite journalism professor when I was at KU, she had a literal folder. She would print things out of instances where people would use lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, and versions of that. She's like, there is more to Kansas than a movie that came out in 1939. There is more to it. Every headline that involved that, she would print it out and keep it in a folder and would show us, like, here's how to not be cliche when you're writing a headline. There is more to Kansas City than barbecue. I promise you.
Yes.
There is more to it. And
why don't we ask them about their favorite jazz albums?
There you go. Favorite museum. What's your favorite part of the Negro Leagues museum? Have you been to 18th and Vine? Like, many different things happening in Kansas City and the greater Kansas City area than just have you had Q39? There's more to the city than that. NBC, this is for you specifically. There are more parts of Kansas City geographically than Union Station and the Plaza. There are more. I guarantee you, Sunday Night Football, first time Chiefs are on Sunday night next year.
The big shuttlecock. And,
they will show the same 3 things. There's more to the city, I promise you. What's your first headline for today?
Staying to the NFL for my first Blue Dot of Kansas headline. And Brendan, we got to talk about your mans. Aaron Rodgers hopes that darkness will help him see the light about his future. The Green Bay Packers quarterback told the Pat McAfee show today that he will embark on a 4-day, 4-night darkness retreat soon after Sunday's Super Bowl. Says, I've got a pretty cool opportunity to do a little self-reflection in some isolation. And then after that, I feel like I'll be a lot closer to a final decision. He says the darkness retreat does not include the use of ayahuasca, which we know he has taken.
Big fan.
Says the retreat will be alone in the confines of a small house in an undisclosed location. He says meals are delivered, but otherwise there's no other contact with the outside world. However, he said he could leave at any point during the stay if he chose to do so.
Yeah, if he's a coward. You can't go on Pat McAfee when 1 million people are going to watch this and then be like, I left after 2.5 days. No. You're staying 4 whole days. You can't be a coward now, Aaron.
5 years ago, I would have said that, this is Aaron Rodgers having a laugh. Like, he's not really doing this.
Yeah.
That was 5 years ago. Now, I totally believe he's going on a 4-day, 4-night darkness retreat. How long would you last on a darkness retreat? I might be able to give you 2 days, 2 nights. Day 3, I'm going to get a little stir crazy.
Yeah, I think I could go at least that long. I was telling you guys in the office earlier today, I've got a pretty wild imagination. Like, I can really get lost daydreaming sometimes. I bet I could use that to get through at least a couple days. Like, even the contact with the DoorDash driver or whoever is bringing me my food a couple of times a day, I could turn that into, like, fantasizing about something. That could survive me a while. I could sleep a little bit. I'd be all right.
Yeah, that would be the thing. Like, you try, sleep, nap. You'd probably do a lot of that because if you can't see.
Yeah.
Valid question from the Big O Tires text line from the 785. How can you self-reflect in the dark? You can't see yourself in a mirror.
Ha. Ha, ha, ha.
Valid question.
Ha, ha, ha.
I just... like... Who are you going to play for next year? Well, I don't know yet. We'll see. It's a process. Right now, I'm under contract with the Green Bay Packers. That's what a normal person would say.
So he did bring that part of it up during the interview because he was asked, you've never been a free agent before. What's it like to have all these Raiders fans at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am saying, come play for our team? And he said, well, I am not a free agent. I'm under contract with the Packers, and that's getting lost here. That quote alone swung the Vegas betting odds, by the way. Going into today, the Raiders were minus 500 to land Aaron Rodgers. That is the odds-on heavy betting favorite because he and Devontae Adams are still super close and obviously had a ton of success together. The Jets were plus 350. The Packers were plus 600 entering today. The Packers and Jets have flipped. So the Jets are now plus 600. The Packers are plus 350. And the Raiders are down to, I think, minus 350 or so.
By the way, I don't know if you saw this. Aaron Rodgers and his playing partner won the Pebble Beach Pro-Am.
They did.
Keith Mitchell finished second. Keith Mitchell is the PGA Tour pro who he and his partner finished second in the event.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not buying Aaron Rodgers' handicap.
Oh?
Yeah.
What does Rodgers say his handicap is?
So
I didn't know they played with a handicap in these things.
Yes. So the amateurs get a handicap.
Oh.
Rodgers is listed as a 3 handicap at Green Bay Country Club. He was getting 10 shots a day. He said he had only played 1 round during training camp and he was getting more shots than he probably deserved to get. You're a 3 handicap. You shouldn't be getting 10 shots. So Keith Mitchell, who finished second with another active NFL quarterback, Josh Allen, said, quote, I think Josh and I won. Aaron Rodgers doesn't count. His handicap was crap. And did not seem to be joking.
All right. So explain to me how this handicap, I thought if you were a plus 3, that mean a 3 handicap, you got 3 strokes.
Right.
So why'd they give him 10?
That's a great question.
I don't know. Okay. I thought I was missing something. Like that's odd. I knew he was a good golfer though.
Mm-hmm.
He won the match, didn't he? He and Tom Brady?
I think they did.
I don't know. Golf and general Aaron Rodgers nonsense and chicanery outside of the football season, I've kind of tuned out of.
That's a good plan.
For what it's worth, by the way, I think he already knows.
Just mute his name on Twitter and check back in August.
Next headline for me, by the way, we will get to a couple more here on our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. We had the big news yesterday that Kyrie Irving has been traded by the Brooklyn Nets. He is going to Dallas. It took over 24 hours for that deal to be finalized. Apparently, the Nets were trying to rope in another team. They wanted to get OG Anunoby from Toronto, which would have made the Nets like winners in the deal, I think. That would have been
I think they're already winners in the deal.
Well,
but
yeah,
you could get Anunoby, yeah.
According to Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN, the Nets are now talking to Kevin Durant about their future as a franchise, their ability to actually contend for a championship, and where they plan to go in the future. According to Woj, so far the Nets have insisted to Durant and inquiring teams that the organization has no intention of moving him prior to Thursday's trade deadline. He would obviously be the biggest player on the market. He demanded and later rescinded a trade or an ask for a trade during the offseason. He's not going to play out the end of his contract in Brooklyn. I do not see that being possible. He's getting older. He's dealt with some injury troubles. The reason he went to Brooklyn in the first place is no longer there. I do not think he sticks it out. I mean, does Kevin Durant really want to try to win a title carrying Spencer Dinwiddie at this point of his career?
Here's the other thing, though, is Kevin Durant has no juice because this summer he asked for a trade. He said, I'm not coming back. You're going to trade me. And Joe Tsai, the owner of the Brooklyn Nets and the front office for the Brooklyn Nets says, no. They said, no, we're not trading you. You're coming back. And Kevin Durant, tail between his legs, went back to Brooklyn. He's got no juice. He is the most juiceless superstar in the NBA. Any other player in the league, they want out, they get what they want. Kyrie Irving, odious as he may be, got exactly what he wanted in 48 hours. Got exactly what he wanted. Kevin Durant has never gotten the thing that he wants other than the ability when he was a free agent to sign where he wanted to sign. But he's never been able to pull those strings that other star players have been able to pull.
Which is pretty wild because he's a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yes, one of the greatest players of all time. Yes.
Indisputably. Yeah, it's a bad situation if you're KD. The Nets, I'm glad failed, but now I don't really care about them because Kyrie's gone. I just don't want him to I don't want him to be miserable for the entirety of his life or whatever, but I don't really want him to find success in the NBA because I find him to be incredibly unpleasant and easy to root against. But I don't really care about the Nets at this point, but KD also makes himself very easy to root against. And best of luck to him because I don't think he's going to play out the rest of the contract because I would imagine he will also get to the headache point where Joe Tsai, the owner, just says, oh my God, let's just move on. If Rudy Gobert can get 5 first-round picks, I think they can get at least that many for Kevin Durant.
That is an all-time disaster trade already for Minnesota. Mired in the middle of the league. Their mix doesn't work.
No, they stink. They're relative to the pieces they have, they stink.
Yes.
They should be so much better than they are. Anthony Edwards is fun, though.
Yes, he is.
Kind of problematic, but he's fun.
Yeah, a little bit problematic this offseason. Yeah.
John Morant, too. NBA, I know we're getting into territory we don't often talk about here on the show because we don't have an NBA team to follow. So we don't really talk about it much until we get to the finals or unless there's a big trade.
John Morant thinks he's in BMF.
Yeah, he's got associates. The Athletics report about people in his inner circle that are a little too close to the action referred to them as associates. That's not good. That's not a good phrase for your crew.
No.
Yeah.
It's an extremely funny story.
Yeah, it is.
And it's made all the more funny that okay, this is cool. Memphis embraced the grit and grind Grizzlies. They're tough. They don't, we don't bluff was the slogan. They that's a city and a team that they don't mind the smoke. They will stand up for themselves. They fashion themselves as kind of bullies, kind of bad guys.
It's kind of the city's it's your team reflecting your city to a degree.
You had that with the Tony Allen, Zach Randolph grit and grind teams, and now you have a younger generation of Memphis Grizzlies that's kind of trying to embrace that same sort of mindset, but going a little too far. Ja Morant was out there threatening trigger play and earlier on Twitter.
Yeah, last offseason he threatened to kill someone.
Yes.
With hollow point bullets.
Yes, he said it's free to see how hollows feel. And quickly deleted that. It's going a little too far. It's one thing to puff your chest out and play physical and be rugged on the floor. It's quite another to have your associates crowding the other team's bus after a game.
Not good. Any other headlines for you today?
Real quick NFL headline. The San Francisco 49ers lost their defensive coordinator to the Houston Texans. DeMeco Ryans, of course, is the new head man for the Texans. They have bounced back, have the 49ers hiring Steve Wilks as their new defensive coordinator. Hell of a hire for Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, that's a really good hire. Matt Barrows, who is the 49ers beat writer for The Athletic, said not only is Steve Wilks a good coach, but one of the big reasons why this was a natural fit from the beginning, he runs a 4-3. The 49ers already have 4-3 personnel, and Kyle Shanahan's whole view is pretty much, if it works, do not touch it. Leave it alone. And now they won't have to change anything schematically. Good fit for the 49ers. And good landing spot for Steve Wilks, too. Because if they find success, he might get another chance to be a head coach. A lot of guys don't get 3, but Cardinals was a bad situation.
He hasn't really gotten one. That's the thing. He really hasn't gotten a fair shot. He got saddled with Josh Rosen in a terrible front office situation in Arizona, an unserious franchise.
Josh Rosen.
and yeah, that was a thing. Boy, I hope none of my Josh Rosen takes survive in the wild, because I was wrong about Josh Rosen.
But his whole thing was he was the most pro-ready of a pretty deep quarterback class.
Yeah.
And he was the worst of them all by miles.
He was really bad.
Awful.
It's him or Zach Wilson, the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen drafted that high. I've seen other, worst quarterback. Paxton Lynch might be the worst quarterback I've ever seen. Tim Tebow is one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But
interesting thread for the two of those.
we got a thread there. But like in terms of like high draft picks, guys who are top 5 picks, like it's Wilson and it's Zach Wilson and it's Josh Rosen.
What was Rosen's line? 9 mistakes were made before me.
Something like that.
And then you made about 900 right after that. Those are our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. Go visit them online at bluedotkansas.com. We have to take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll look ahead to K-State versus Baylor coming up next on 580 Sports Talk. Brenton and Dan here with you. 534 on 580 Sports Talk. Listening on the Sports Voice of Kansas or on 580WIBW.com or on YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. We appreciate you however you are interacting, listening, watching the show today. I asked Michael Swain this question earlier on in regard to KU. So I'll ask you in regard to KU as well. Right now, what is the percentage chance you think the KU gets a share of the Big 12 championship following yesterday's win over Texas? Michael gave us plus 300, which it would be a 25% chance. I checked the math on that.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little higher just because it's what they do.
Okay.
I'll give it a 50% chance. Because I don't think they're going to lose more than 5 in the league. I don't think they'll go worse than 6-1 down the stretch. And I could see Texas losing 2. And Iowa State does have to play games outside of Ames city limits, so they'll probably drop a couple as well. I think 5 is the number. I think you lose any more than 5, you are going to not factor in. But I think that anybody who ends up 13-5, and there could be 3 or 4 teams that end up 13-5, they're going to be the champions of the league.
K-State's odds.
K-State, I got to look at their schedule again because you catch a bit of a break tonight, obviously playing TCU without Mike Miles. Eddie Lampkin is back. He says he's back. We'll see how back he is, how well he plays. tonight in a return because he's a matchup problem for K-State. He's a matchup problem for everybody in the league. The road games left for K-State are all manageable. Like they could win Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, West Virginia. And then at home, they got to hold serve against TCU, Iowa State, Baylor, and Oklahoma. That feels like, I'll tell you what, if they win tonight, I'll give them the same 50% odds as KU.
All right.
If they win tonight. Because I think that if they win tonight, they can win out at home and then maybe drop one of those road games. And again, I think they finish 13-5 and 12-6 is pretty damn good record. The league is just so good.
It's absurd. It is truly, truly absurd. Taking a look at some bracketology at the moment. You will like this. Now, a couple of these websites have not been updated since before yesterday's games. Like over at CBS, Jerry Palm's last update was yesterday morning, so it doesn't include the KU versus Texas game. Although he already had KU as a 1. He's got Big 12 teams, 2 1s and a 2, if I'm reading his bracket correctly. He's got KU and Texas both as 1s, and he's got K-State as a 2. That's crazy to get 3 of the top 8 seeds in the entire tournament.
Yeah.
This is for you, though. He's got K-State going to Denver.
Hey, now.
That would be K-State versus Northwestern State, and then K-State would take on the winner of Creighton and Michigan State. I'd much rather face Michigan State than Creighton, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Creighton, I think, lost a little bit of its luster from earlier in the season, but they still got some shot makers.
Yeah.
They got some dudes who can ball.
They're going to be a tough out.
The other teams in Denver, by the way, from CBS, he's got Arizona and Illinois as the 2 and 7 from the West. That'd be a pretty fun region to go to.
Yeah, it would.
He's got KU in the East Regional, which stinks. But he's got them going to Des Moines first weekend against my beloved Vermont Catamounts. USC also in that bracket. No, thank you. I do not care that the Mobleys are gone. Keep them a million miles away. I have too many scars. From Joe Lenardi at ESPN, he's got KU as a 2, but in Kansas City in the Midwest region. So there's the classic. This is really a classic KU question. Would you rather be a 2 in a better regional, or would you rather be a 1 in a worse regional?
Yeah, I'd rather play virtual home games. Although, the last time KU was in a regional it was a Sprint Center then, didn't go great.
Damn, Oregon.
Dylan Brooks.
Cursed. Bad time for my guy Landon Lucas to have the worst game of his entire life.
Who was the big boy that just blocked everything?
Bell.
Jordan Bell.
Yeah. Freaking Jordan Bell.
He had in my memory, he had 15 block shots in that game.
For what it's worth, in the Midwest Regional, Lenardi also has Kansas State. He's got KU as the 2, K-State as the 4.
Hey, let's party.
Can you imagine? Party like it's 1988.
Yep, exactly.
KU
exactly.
Versus K-State Elite 8. Let's go. The Bracket Matrix, bracketmatrix.com, they've got KU as a 1, and K-State right now is a 4. Bracketmatrix.com, by the way, it's just an aggregate of, it's something like 138 brackets. It's crazy. The whole internet, everyone's bracketology, they pool it all
Everybody's
together.
bracket, 13-year-old named Jethro from
For real.
Ohio.
The bracketology from a computer science class in Illinois is factored into this. Bracket odds. Bracket odds. .computerscience.illinois.edu.
Bracket Todd's bracket odds.
That's my new website. Bracket Todd's. What is that? It's a guy named Todd comes up with a bracket. By the way, some late breaking news. Derek Carr is taking a visit to the New Orleans Saints.
Interesting.
The Raiders have allowed that visit.
Interesting.
They're going to be the most on fire 7-10 team you've ever seen in your life. Although Carter Olave could be kind of fun. All right, we have actual college basketball to get to. Real games that are happening tonight. K-State taking on Purple Baylor, TCU. TCU doesn't have Mike Miles. I mean, that's the difference in this game, right? Like, if he plays, I think there's a lot more to break down. TCU is still good. They've still got good players. Eddie Lampkin can go. Damian Baugh is a good player.
Mm-hmm. They just don't have the creation
No.
and the bucket getting ability.
Right.
Like the one dude that you're in trouble, he can get you a hoop.
We talked about that with Texas earlier. The Texas just has a bunch of guys who can hit tough shots to an almost NBA degree.
Yeah.
If Mike Miles is out there, he's the best shot maker on the floor. But with him not out there, the two best shot makers on the floor both belong to K-State. It's Johnson and Noel.
Yeah. And opportunity is going to be important for Kansas State because they lost TCU because they turned the ball over a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
And they lost to Texas because they turned it over a bunch. So that, I think, is going to be the key to this one for Kansas State. Just valuing the basketball, valuing your possessions, being a little more in control when you have transition opportunities, because TCU will give those up too. They like to play fast. You can pressure them in the backcourt, maybe force some turnovers, and then you can get out and run. But Kansas State has to run smart. Sometimes you run too hard. You don't run smart, and you throw a bad pass on a 3-on-1 and it turns into nothing, or you turn it right back over because you throw a bad outlet pass. So Kansas State, game is about control. This game is about controlling the basketball. This game is about controlling the pace. TCU is not going to be a team probably that shoots the heck out of it. You know, really the only game they've done that all year was at Allen Fieldhouse.
Yeah.
But they're not a great 3-point shooting team. So if you can get them in the half court, I think Kansas State generally defends really well in the half court. They had trouble with Christian Bishop on Saturday, but I think that their strategy and the way they double and the way they switch gives them a chance to make it hard for TCU to score in the half court. So for Kansas State, it's just going to be fewer empty possessions. They're a good enough offensive team that if they don't have 15 to 20 empty possessions, they can find a way to win this game. And add to it, like we talked about earlier, I thought it was a really trenchant point that Jay Billis made on the broadcast on ESPN of the Kansas-Texas game last night, that every night in the Big 12, you run into a good team, but you're running into a desperate team. You're running into a team that just took a tough loss. You're running into a team that maybe is starting to stack losses together and needs quality wins or needs a win to stay in the conference race because so many teams are in the hunt. Kansas State is the desperate team in this game, and I think that makes a difference. I think they'll find a way to claw this one out.
Does it mean anything to you that in rematch games this year, K-State's 0-2?
Not really, because
I agree.
The rematch against Kansas was at Allen Fieldhouse.
Yep.
And the rematch against Texas, they lost by 3 points. And like one possession game could have gone either way. Like I would be,
and they had chances.
Yes. Like I would be troubled if it felt like they had, for lack of a better way to put it, if Kansas State felt like they were figured out, like somebody had figured them out. I don't think they've been figured out. I just think they've been a little sloppy with the basketball. And I thought against Texas, they should play hard enough in the second half. They got out-toughed in the second half. That is not going to happen again. And TCU's the team, they're a real front-running bunch. Like when things are going well for them, they go really, really well for them. When they get on a run, they're really hard to slow down. So I think this will be a game where the crowd and the atmosphere kind of factors in, because it's two teams that are, I think, similar in that way. Where like when the confidence rises, the level of play rises. And so Kansas State's got to be the team that goes on the run, that throws the first punch, and that plays a tough 40 minutes, a controlled 40 minutes of basketball. I think that message will have been delivered soundly from Jerome Tang, and I think that's what the Cats will deliver.
So are you telling me that TCU is the Missouri Western of the Big 10 or of the Big 12?
I can see that.
A lot of people are very interested in Kansas State tonight. Over at FanDuel, K-State is a 4.5-point favorite, minus 120.
Yeah, been a lot
on that one. A lot of people are betting K-State.
Yeah, been a lot of juice on that one all day, in fact. And surprised the line didn't move even a bit with the news of Lampkin playing. So that may be an indication of how much impact that he might expect to have. And we all have our systems when we bet, from picking the perfect upset to combing through injury reports the night before the game. But there's one thing every bettor should include in their system, and that's the responsible gaming tools available on FanDuel Sportsbook. These tools help keep your play in check and under control. Tools like time limits, so you don't unknowingly spend more time on the app than you intended, wager limits to help prevent you from betting more than you should, and you can even take a timeout, which pauses your account for as long as you may need. FanDuel wants every bettor's experience to be about fun and entertainment. So visit FanDuel.com/playwell and make responsible gaming tools a part of your system. You must be 21 and present in Kansas to use FanDuel. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help's your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
K-State is even featured in the John Rothstein We Sleep in May parlay of the day over at FanDuel. If you want to play that one, it's no spreads, just money lines. It's K-State, North Carolina, and Michigan State to all win their respective games.
Michigan State's got Maryland tonight. North Carolina's at Wake Forest.
At Wake Forest, yeah.
I don't think Carolina's going to be Wake Forest.
No. You've been down on North Carolina all year.
I have. Maybe that's a me problem.
No, I mean, they're still not ranked. They've still got issues. They lost to Duke the other day. And as you heard from me earlier, Duke's not any good. We've got to take a quick break here on 580 Sports Talk. We got more of the show coming up next. Dan, 3 quick hitters for you before we get to the final word today.
All right.
Number 1, can you name the only team in the country in either divisions 1 or 2 that is undefeated in men's basketball? There's one. If you can name this team in one guess, I will give you my next paycheck.
Ooh, that's some pressure on the line here. It's definitely not a Division I team. It is not Division I men's basketball. There are no undefeated teams. So it's got to be a Division II team, and I know it's not an MIAA team. I follow that league. Is it? Oh gosh, West Virginia Wesleyan?
It is not.
Okay.
No, it is not. Nova Southeastern in Fort Lauderdale. I'm sorry, it's also in Davie. Its main campus is in Davie, Florida, but it also has a location in Fort Lauderdale.
Nova Southeastern.
I did not know Nova Southeast. I figured that was in South Philly. I had no idea that was
not
a real
Villanova Southeastern.
Also from the basketball realm, pretty cool. Just saw a video of Christian Brown working out with Darrell Arthur before the Nuggets game tonight.
Yeah.
Darrell Arthur, obviously KU, 2 national champions at KU working out. That's pretty cool.
Former Nugget and a current Nugget. Yeah.
Yep. Arthur now working in the front office for the Nuggets as well. A ref yelled at Sharon Collins last night.
Yeah, I saw that.
That is unbelievably funny.
That was Keith Kimball, right?
Was it? I didn't know which ref it was.
I thought that was Keith Kimball.
Last night, by the way, was probably the best ref Big 12 game of the season.
I was about to say, it wasn't a whistle fest. There were some calls they could have made, but I would rather watch a game where you let some go than when you're calling every time.
Agreed. 1,000,000% agree. And I wish that the league would officiate that same way. I would much rather, man, you could have called a foul there, but you could have called it on either end, and you just keep playing. There was so much more flow to the game.
Like, there's a lot of contact in the post, play on. Like, there's a lot of contact. Offensive player dipped the shoulder a bit. Defensive player leaned in a bit. Doesn't need to be anything. Let it go.
Yep, I agree.
Let it play. There's flow to the game that way. Yeah, it was. I thought that crew, by and large, did a nice job. But apparently that's a point of emphasis now is controlling the rabble, because there was a student got kicked out of the K-State game on Saturday. I forget which official that was. It was a no-name crew as far as Big 12 crews go on Saturday in Manhattan. I had never heard of any of those refs. Like, Higgins wasn't around, wasn't Ray Natili, wasn't Doug Sermons, wasn't Amy Bonner, wasn't Keith Kimball, wasn't any of the usual suspects, right? But one of those refs had to get kicked out of Bramlage during the game. And it's like, look, don't be a rabbit ears, do your job.
Right.
And you know what? Part of your job is those people that bought tickets are going to give you the business if you call it in a way that they don't like. And either you've got the chest for that or you don't. And if you don't, go back to refereeing JV high school games.
The absolute evil triumvirate of Keith Kimball, Doug Sermons, and John Higgins was officiating as a group Penn State versus Nebraska on Sunday. How did that crew get that game?
That's a weird one.
I was watching it and I was like, oh man, that's Higgins. And I'm like, hey, I know all these guys.
Higgins is like a bus driver or like a Greyhound driver, or a long haul trucker right now, doing the hours and the travel that he's doing. But no, like, honestly, Keith Kimball and the other two guys who had last night's game, my hat is off to them. I thought that was the best officiated Big 12 game I've watched all season.
And it really wasn't close, which is somewhat unfortunate. We've got to take one more break. The final words next on 580 Sports Talk. Wrapping up this edition of 580 Sports Talk with the final word, Dan.
Picking the Cats tonight. It's a bit of a desperation spot for K-State. Want to avoid 4 straight league losses, 3 straight overall losses. I just think this veteran team is going to have the know-how to respond, take better care of the ball, be more aggressive on the glass, and find a way to reward the Bramlage Coliseum crowd with a winning performance over a shorthanded TCU team tonight.
And I'll go with the other side of the Sunflower State for my final word. Last night was one of the most important wins for KU all year, not only because it kept the Jayhawks in the race for the Big 12 championship, now just a game behind first place Texas and possibly first place Iowa State after their game coming up tomorrow, but it showed that KU can win without getting a great night from Jalen Wilson. It showed that KU does indeed have other dudes in its starting lineup and on the bench who can put up some points and can make a big impact even when their surefire first-team consensus All-American doesn't have his best night. That was an encouraging win for KU. Now they've got to string a couple together, and that starts on the road in Norman against Oklahoma and the Sooners coming up on Saturday. That'll do it for 580 Sports Talk today. Coming up tonight at 7 o'clock, we've got pregame coverage for K-State basketball, tip at 8 on the K-State Sports Radio Network. Dan's going to have your coverage for the game. Follow along on Twitter at Sports on 580 and be tuned to our YouTube channel, Sports on 580 WIBW, for the postgame wrap-up. We'll recap the game coming up tomorrow with Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com. We'll, of course, also have plenty of Super Bowl 57 coverage. That's tomorrow from 3 to 6. Until then, for Dan, I'm Brendan. You've been listening to 580 Sports Talk.